Firstly, we would like to thank, I'm Zack from Austra Energy, and we'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in this. So we've got Jinko and Growatt been working with us really hard. They're our major sponsors for this event. And we'd also like to thank Bridge Select, Energy Training Group, and Dynamo Expo for being involved. So first up, we've got our presenters. First, you'll be seeing Jinko, which with about all the latest panels, along with the future of panels and N-type, and exactly how our N-type technology works and how you can use it in your systems to boost the efficiency and prepare for the future. We've also got Growatt, future-proofing systems for batteries, looking at how we're going to be using batteries in future systems, how we can prepare people to actually begin using them, and then also looking at how Growatt is releasing both their new inverters and batteries and best looking on towards the future. We've then got Dynamo with an expert presenter in sales talking all about the batteries and how you can best sell batteries and maximize your sales in that area. And then finally, we will be having Energy Training Group. They'll be going through all the essentials that you need to know about installing batteries, as well as looking at the new Growatt Arc XH and how you can install that. So we've got Thomas from the Regional Sales Manager at Jinko, presenting for Jinko. Rex Wang, the National Marketing Manager for Growatt. We have Brendan Laidlaw, Head Trainer for Energy Training Group, and then Raimond Volpe for Dynamo Selling. I hope you're all looking forward to this, and first up we will be having Thomas from Jinko.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Great to be here in Melbourne, which is my favourite city after all the others. You guys have a fantastic MCG, fantastic, probably the best AFL in the country, and the best hay fever I found out yesterday, which wasn't perfect for preparing a speech like this. But anyway, glad to be here with you guys, and thank you all for your hospitality, those of you that I've met already, and looking forward to meeting the rest of you as the evening goes on. So on the screen, you can see our presentation today. Very clearly, we want to talk about the installation considerations for the next generation of solar. And I feel that I'm best placed to do this because I have been an installer before. I've watched the change and what kind of things come up as we move across the panel models. And I'm very pleased to be talking to you about that today. So back in TAFE, they told us when we were giving a presentation to tell you what we want to share with you, share it with you, and then to summarise it at the end. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm just going to quickly introduce Jinko for those of you who maybe don't know Jinko. Look at what the future holds. Look at the concept of product stewardship, which is something new that's coming up. And go through, of course, our new Tiger Neo panels. Finally, we'll just touch on some of those points to consider when we're installing newer panels as we get into that next generation of systems. So firstly on Jinko. I'm very proud to be working at Jinko. If members of my family wanted to put on solar panels, I've got no hesitation in recommending our company because Jinko has been selling panels for more than a decade in Australia, has got the runs on the board, 80 gigawatts worldwide sales, which is more than pretty much any other company. So that means Jinko is the most experienced. And that's reflected in our installers. Our installers also tend to be the more educated, the more experienced installers that are in it for the long haul. So it's a good match, a match made in heaven. Apart from being a company with a lot of sales, we also have some technical depth. So if you're looking at who's going to work well with you into the future, you want a company that's growing. So we saw companies like LG pull out. They don't have the scale to match it with someone like Jinko. Jinko, being the largest manufacturer, is able to invest in R&D and deliver this progress. So as time goes on, the power capacity of those panels from Jinko are going to get higher and higher relative to the market. Of course, when we do R&D, we are awarded accolades. And what these are tools for you guys. When you're selling solar systems with your customers, when you're wanting to have them choose you over other vendors, the awards that we have help you to do that, help you to build trust. So it's important that you're aware and you're putting these on your emails. Top brand in 2021 here in Australia. So that's actually a survey of what panel installers would recommend. So EUPD there. PVEL, that's independent assessment of reliability. So I'm trusting that you guys as installers have had a fantastic experience with our panel. Our claim rate is extremely low. And that's another thing that we're very proud of and that you can mention in your sales processes. So today I'd like to talk about the future. And first, before I do that, I want to sort of get you thinking about why it's important to look at this topic. Why do we want to know about the future? Well, this year, in Victoria and across Australia in 2022, we need to be able to separate our business. There's slightly less rebates now. We're looking to put on bigger systems, on new houses perhaps, guys with EV chargers and with batteries. We want to be able to set our business apart by showing how we are expert as installers. So it's all about selling you guys and your company, and we're underpinning that at Jinko, a form of insurance, if you like, for your business, that you have a solid partner. I've given the example before that if you bought a Ferrari, you guys are the Ferrari, and we're the Continental tyres, the Goodyear tyres on there, the known brand that makes sure that everything goes right for you. You wouldn't have a Ferrari, for example, your businesses, and fit that with You'll Love Coles tyres or Kirkland tyres from Costco, right? It's got to be a good match. So we actually help to underpin your business. And that means that as you go forward, 4 or 5 years on, you don't have as many calls for warranty. You have the confidence to get repeat business from your end users. But most importantly, by working with Jinko, you show expertise. Jinko leads with the new products like the Tiger Neo. We show the way. And in that way, you can show your customer, hey, competing businesses are selling old tech. We've got new technology here, and we are experts. This is really critical if you want to get a premium from your customer and if you want to be able to get them to go forward with solar at all. The other thing I'd like to cover in terms of how the future is changing things is what effect new panels will have on your workflow. What are the basic things you need to understand maybe as business owners and separately as an installation project management business? Of course, we're looking at how to increase our basket size. So you possibly have found, as the years have passed, the number of systems being sold in the market is less. But if you can have a larger system installed, then you still can maintain revenue for your business and you can stay in business so you can help your customers. So one thing we like to do as solar installers that are reputable and committed to the market is stick around to support our end users. The only way we can do that is if we maintain the growth of our businesses. So every time you install more systems, you're protecting your users that have already bought from you in the past. So what is the future? There's a hint on the screen here. The future is N-type. And this statement seems like a simple statement, the future is N-type. But if we think back to 4 or 5 years ago, the panels we were using, what colour were they? They were blue, they were poly panels. Now you wouldn't be able to install a poly panel. But visionary installers chose Jinko and perhaps some other brands of mono and started then, and they now have that track record they can show customers. 4 years ago, in Sunbury, in Werribee, I installed N-type. In that case, it would have been I installed mono, but now if you're on the cusp using the newer technology N-type, you'll be able to say that as you go forward, that you were here first. So what is N-type and what is TopCon? So essentially, the very first solar cells that were made in Bell Labs in the 50s were N-type panels. But we moved to P-type because space was a major application of solar panels, and P-type suited space. But now the industry's come back to think full circle. Well, we actually want to put panels on Earth. What type of cell architecture works best in the sunlight here on planet Earth? And that is N-type. So N-type delivers us a key benefit, which is efficiency. But apart from efficiency, by using the TopCon process, using the TopCon process here, we are able to achieve even more efficiency than we were able to achieve with the basic PERT solar cells. So TopCon, you can understand, is the next generation of N-type. So some of you have been using Jinko for a few years, have been using N-type with us since maybe 2019. We're very big believers in this. And this here is just a quick summary diagram of what the construction is of a TopCon cell. Now, TopCon opens the door to do a lot of things like bifacial. So the structural difference here between N-type of history past and the TopCon now is in this bottom layer of the cell. And that primarily gives us benefits with bifacial, but it also does give us benefits with the yield of the solar panel. So guys, what happens in a solar cell? A solar cell is a semiconductor sitting out in the sun. The rays come down and they bounce electrons off of the little ions and atoms in that silicon. Now what can happen is that some of them go back to the hole they were in before. That's called recombination. If we can stop that happening, more of the energy, will come out into our circuit. So this structure here, essentially what you can understand that to do is to make sure more of the electrons are captured by the system, and therefore we have more current and we have more energy yield from our solar cells. So what does TopCon do? It gives you a technology buzzword that you can say, we've got the latest tech, TopCon 2. What does it do for your customer on their bill? It saves them money because it yields more more energy from the same area. Here we have some examples of the rate of progress in the technology. So here is P-type panels. Now what do you guys notice about that black curve? The first thing you notice is that it's flattening out here. So what does that mean? It means there's not much headroom for P-type panels to increase their power in output. So how are we going to constantly improve efficiency of solar panels? Well, we're going to step into N-type, and you can see that line is trending up like that. So there is a higher upper limit of possible efficiency for solar panels. So that means we can make panels with the same area with more watts as time goes on with N-type. It's harder and less achievable to do that with P-type. So if your partner is not investing in N-type, they're going to get left behind. You guys have probably had the experience when you are talking to a homeowner or a business owner about buying panels. You've got the 440 in your pocket, someone else is selling 350. It intuitively says to the customer the 440 is more advanced than the 350 just because of the difference in power. Very powerful in the boardroom for commercial, in the lounge room for residential. Here's just a graphical representation of some of the other benefits of N-type. And you guys wrap your heads around this because it's going to be useful for you when you do sell the Tiger Neo. In the back end of this year, you're going to be selling heaps of Tiger Neo, and you want to understand these gains. So Australia is a hot place. Panels that work better in hot temperatures are easier to sell to the customer. It's a very simple argument. The higher the temperature, the bigger the difference in performance between the N-type panels with TopCon 2 and the basic P-type. And the numbers tell the story with the difference in the temperature coefficient. And that's all day, every day, right? So it performs better today, tomorrow, for the whole of its life. So 25, 30 years of life. It has higher bifacial gain. And what that means is the big projects are going to use more and more of the N-type product. And there's going to be more investment in N-type. So the whole market's going to shift that way. So in Australia, we have a strange situation. That because of our wonderful installers, our wonderful solar retailers, we have a huge domestic market here in Australia. But in the world, the big projects, the utility power stations are the dominant factor in the solar market. So that's where the energy of the investment goes towards, the power plant style of panels. So what that means is that over time, the N-type panels will become the ones where the cells are more efficient because they're also able to be used in the bifacial for the big projects. Finally, you've all heard the joke where you put the P-type solar panels in the sun, and the first year they're out in the sun, they drop off with light-induced degradation. And we can manage that by a warranty process, right? Assuming a certain amount of drop-off first year and then a certain amount years after. The important thing to understand is that the N-type drops off less. And over time, the gap in performance of an N-type panel is far superior than that of a P-type. And when you do financial modelling for, let's say, a school who's going to own that building for the whole life of that panel, it's very critical that you can show that yield benefit. Maybe for a homeowner, they may own their home for a shorter period of time. They may be less interested if they're going to be there for 4 or 5 years and then sell. But most people like to think of their homes as forever homes, and they'd be very interested to see that the yield is better on an N-type. This is just some real-world data to back up what we're saying here. So we've done some installations around our factory with the N-type, and the gains using N-type bifacial compared to even P-type bifacial is significant. So we can see very clearly this is where the whole industry is going. So I've just talked to you about technology, things like power coefficients and that kind of thing. For your homeowner, what does it mean? Panels last longer, panels put more power out, very simple. I'm telling you guys the nitty-gritty detail because it's helpful for you as experts to understand it. But for the end user, longer warranty, lasts longer, puts out more energy. Very simple. That's N-type. Now what N-type does is it delivers us more efficiency, which is more watts in a panel. If we can put more watts in a panel, we can put more watts into a pallet. We can use less packaging. So there's a concept called product stewardship, which is becoming more important. Like, how do we recycle? How do we deal with our packaging and waste stream? How can we minimize the amount of carbon dioxide emissions on transport? And I saw yesterday at Online Solar Electrical, that Solar and Air, that they were recycling their soft plastics, which is the first time I've seen that. So we're going to be looking at Jinko very carefully how to help the market to recycle more of the packaging materials, but also by using N-type, more efficient panels, you will have less packaging anyway. You will have less trips in to the wholesaler. You will have less containers on ships. So that element is perhaps not obvious, that when you use N-type, you have a better environmental outcome with all the packaging and with all the transport. And just as an aside, we are working to integrate this sort of labelling that you might have seen on your toothpaste or on other consumer products. We're working to integrate that into our packaging, our collateral, so that you as installers have a very clear pathway of what to do with your waste streams. The other thing about stewardship is how long do things last? So imagine we're trying to look after the planet. What do we want to do? We don't want to drive heaps of trucks and belch out heaps of smoke. That's one thing. Now the other thing is when we make products, we don't want them to break tomorrow. We want them to last the distance. So what are we doing at Jinko to make things last the distance? Well, of course we're doing R&D across the board, but also we're using the DuPont Tedlar backsheets in our Tiger Neos here that we're launching today. We've been a long time user of DuPont Tedlar backsheet, and that's one of the reasons that you get high reliability from Jinko products. Now we're also of course using genuine MC4 for our rooftop panels. Make sure that when people join the panels together as a whole system, it keeps functioning for longer. Of course, there is a financial payoff when things last longer. As you can see here, if you can get the panels to last instead of 10 years, but more towards 25 years, that can actually lower the effective cost of the electricity. And that's supported by longer warranties on the N-type product as well. So the backsheet makes panels last longer, and also the N-type itself puts out more energy for longer. So that delivers you a benefit in terms of the environment, because you're not having to strip the panels off and change them for new ones. So, here we are today to talk about the focus of our presentation, which is Tiger Neo. So 2022 really is going to be the year of the Tiger. This particular product here, you're going to hear more and more about it. So you guys are at the launch event today, so you're hearing about that first before everyone else. Now, the Tiger Neo in the rooftop market is coming to Australia as a 470 and a 415 with a 20-year warranty. So that panel here on the very right here, you can see the 54-cell panel. In the N-type, that's a 415. So 415 watts is a shorter panel than the current 370. So if you look here, we've got the dimensions 1722, so that's the length. The 415 N-type and also the 415 Tiger Pro P-type are shorter than the 370, which is 1756. So you can see already you're getting some benefit in terms of rows. You can install more rows, this product, because sometimes with the longer panels, when you want to do 2 rows and you've got a gutter and a ridge, you can't necessarily fit them in there. The shorter we can make that panel, the more that we can potentially do jobs. I think there's just a small problem with the microphone here, so I'm just going to change that microphone over. Thank you. So, the other panel which is going to be quite important here is the 470, which will trend to a 475. So many of you have used the 440, and we're continuing to stock that in Australia. But in that footprint, in that size, we'll shortly have a 470 available, which will certainly enable you to cut the number of panels that you're using on a job. So just in summary, what is happening with the Tiger Neo product? Of course, you've got the advanced warranties. That comes, like all of our N-type products, with a long warranty. And the 60 cell and 54 cell, so that's the 415 and the 470, coming to market with the 20-year product warranty. And that's supported by real changes in the product. It has the N-type cells. It has the Tedlar backsheet to help it last longer. It's not just a matter of changing numbers on paper. It represents real effort in R&D, which we can show you in detail if you're interested about damp heat testing and all the other testing that we do. The other thing that we touched on before, apart from the reliability, is the temperature coefficient. So it performs better in hot weather. It also has a lower drop-off in year 1 compared to poly and standard P-type mono panels. So that means that the energy that it has in year 2 is more than an equivalent P-type panel with the same STC power. The family as a whole, so in our P-type we've got Pro, Tiger Pro, P for Pro, P-type, N for Neo, N-type. They're both benefiting from our new 182mm cell technology, which has more bus bars there. So that's something that might come up in conversation, like how many bus bars does the panel have? And you would be able to show that, okay, the older technology has 5 bus bars or maybe 9 bus bars, and this has more bus bars. The other thing that might not be obvious is that the bus wires have become thinner and become a circular ribbon. So that helps the light to jump in around the electrical contacts that are on the front of the cell. And that's one of the secrets to getting more energy out the other end of the panel. This is just a bit of a picture of what's going to happen in terms of the power. So we're starting with 415. And then we see a picture where this ramps up across the start of next year into that 420, 425 space. So what this solid line here represents is the typical power, and this shaded area represents possible power that can be achieved. So we would expect even in Q4 to be able to get towards 425 in output. And it's our goal to make that a panel that can hit near to 440, but in a 54 cell footprint. So there's a big jump in output. Same thing with the 470 there. It starts off in that 470 peak, and we're looking to get that to 475, which is a little bit better for STCs. So these 2 panels, 415, 470, will be the main Neo N-types that you see launching in Q2 here in Australia. Now, with new tools and new packaging, it's worth to think about how does it affect our work as installers. So one of the key things to understand is that a lot of habits have been built up back when the panels were much smaller. So when, for example, we had a 200 watt panel and there were maybe 20 in a pallet, the weight of that pallet tended to be a lot less because we had thick frames, not as much glass. But now we're getting 35 and possibly 36 panels in a pallet. Doing this kind of thing is going to overload the vehicle, and we can see the proof in the pudding. And also we've got a trailer here which obviously is completely off chops for a vehicle that's already got more than a ton on it. So when we introduce new products into our business, it's really important that if we're using contract installers or even if we're needing to train our own internal staff, we think about what the changes will bring beyond the obvious. Okay, the obvious thing is we've got to tell the sales guys we've got new products. The next thing is we've got to make sure the dimensions of our racking is going to match our new products. Then we've got to think about our equipment and our vehicles. So the panels now, they're going to be a little bit wider. So 182mm cells are the future, or essentially are where the market is going. And those cells deliver a panel which has a width which is 1134 or 1.1 meters. So it means that most of the panels on the market in the back end of this year will be wider than panels you have been using. So what does that mean? Well, it might mean that you've got a ladder lift, and this section here, it's not wide enough. You've got to make sure that that's longer when you start doing jobs with it. It might mean that your trailer has some kind of cage, and can it fit things inside, and can you prepare for that change before you get the stock in? So those are the kind of things that we want to think about. And of course the railing, you may need to do some trimming, or you may need to talk to your wholesaler about what rails are most appropriate for this type of panel. So those are the things to put your thinking caps on. There may be other things that you would think about as installers. Perhaps like where would you put your solar edge or your end phase on that panel? How far do the cables reach from the junction boxes? Where are the junction boxes on the back of the panel? These are the considerations we have as installers. Now the other consideration we have is our time. Our time is valuable, and I do thank you guys for coming out and watching online our session today, because our time is very valuable. So we're always thinking about how can we save the environment, how can we save packaging, but also how can we save our time, get back to our families. And one of the ways is with installing less panels. So if you're doing a job with 370 and you wanted to do a typical job, you might be installing 18 panels. So guys doing, say, like 6.6, I think is the 18 panels with 370. Now, if you go forward and you change your business towards the 415, you're immediately going to see a saving in panels. You're going to see a saving in time for you guys. You potentially could do 2 jobs on summer days in certain situations. So it opens the door to save time essentially by 2 panels, which can mean maybe 4 meters of rail. It could mean multiple tile hooks not needing to be done. It can mean avoiding a chimney and doing a house you couldn't do before. So some houses, maybe they can't fit 18, but they can fit 16. Now you can do 6.6 job. So that's a critical difference. Of course, if you're using our 440, you're already experiencing going home half an hour early because you're doing 15 panels. With the 470, take it another step further. So it's all about saving time, but also saving tile hooks, saving tin feet, saving those trips up and down the ladder. Some other changes in the industry I'd just like to make you aware of, that as we go forward, there'll be more panels in the pallets. So why did the panels get really expensive last year? One reason was electricity and materials in China, but another was shipping. Got much more expensive. How much more? 10 times. 10 times more expensive. Instead of being $1,000 to $1,500 for a container, how would you like 15,000? So imagine if you went to the petrol station. Before it was $1.90 a litre. Now it's $20. You're paying a mango a litre. That is the kind of change that we have seen with the freight costs. So that is why you are seeing more panels in a container and in a pallet. And you will see the packaging go from 35 pieces a pallet to 36. So obviously that's one of those things where they work through the current stock and get into the new stock. Now to do that, the packaging needs to change a little bit. And what will happen is that you need to have some sort of thought about how do you stop the panels tipping once you've opened a pallet. Now some guys are already thinking about this and have processes in place. I'm sure online Air and Solar or Solar Training Centre can help you with that. But essentially, whereas before we might have done half a job from a pallet and then left that on the ute, doing that may be more dangerous as we go forward. Doesn't matter what brand, every brand will do this type of packaging. So the box that's around the pallet on the top is going to be separate from the base. So with most of the Jinko panels you get now, the box actually wraps under the panels. So the pressure of the panel sitting on top stops it from tipping over. And that way of packaging is changing now to one that needs some more thought. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on that we're seeing a real benefit with the N-type and with the half cell technology and the more bus bars is in the reduction of hotspots and possibilities of micro cracks developing into something that's malignant, like that's going to damage the panel. So I mentioned before that there's more bus bars or bus wires on the front of the cell. And what that's delivering for us is when you get slight imperfections in the cell, that cell in general has many pathways to get to the electrical contacts, and now the energy can get out. So before, when you had, say, a panel with 3 bus wires or bus bars, there could be a section of that panel that got cracked and it prevented other parts of that cell's energy from getting out to the wider circuit and causing hotspots. But as we move forward with more N-types, with more bus bars, we would expect that you will start to see, even in shaded situations, a much better performance in terms of the hotspots that may form when you have areas of the cell that are dead. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but when the cells get microcracks, when they get stress, parts of those cells become dead. And if you have a lot of bus wires on the front, then you can capture more of that energy and it's less likely to cause problems. So why did we not just do that from the first place? Why did solar cells have 2 or 3 bus wires before? Is because we didn't have that automation that we now have. And the other thing is that the more thick bus bars that you put on the front of the cell, it would cover where the light is coming in. But now we've developed that circular bus wire technology. It's not covering or stopping the light from entering the cell. So that's why we're able to address more of these hotspot risks now as we go forward. So the other thing I just wanted to point out is a couple of local market factors. So here in Australia, Jinko panels are supplied for residential with black frames. So here is an international poster that you will see in the forum here today with a silver frame, but the Tiger Neo 54 cell, so that's the 415, the Tiger 470, which is a 60 cell, they have black frames. They have MC4 connectors, or MC4 EVO2, and they have 1200mm leads. So just in case you're using international resources or going on the website in China or Europe or something, just be aware that the bill of materials here in Australia is a superior build, so some of those things don't apply. Now, speaking of the frame colour, there has been a trend in the C&I space, in the commercial space, to use silver. So when you go into those 72 cell panels, like maybe a Jinko 540 or maybe a Jinko 475 in the P-type, those tend to have silver frames. So just be aware of that in your customer conversations. The other thing is in the larger projects like utility and potentially bigger C&I jobs, the costs come under even more focus and you tend to have the connectors which are the panel company's own connector. So you can normally get that from your wholesaler, but just to be aware that if you're using something like SolarEdge or Enphase, best to stick with the rooftop panels, which are the 60 cell, the 54 cell. If you're going to be doing a big project ground mounted, if you order standard 540s or 545 panels, they will come with the silver frame and the Jinko connector. Just something to think about if you're planning larger jobs. The best thing to do on a big project is have some dialogue with the distributor. So talk in this case to Austra and see what they have on the shelf and how it's packed. Is it packed how your last job came? Because solar is changing all the time. And what that means is that every 6 to 9 months, there'll be a development in the packaging or the power class and such things like that. Now, I do have one other point which I'd like to share with you guys as business owners, as salespeople, to think about with the pricing in the market. So currently the pricing in Australia is very low compared to the global market. So for reasons of a slowdown at the start of this year, we're seeing some very competitive pricing, which is great for you guys, you get a good deal. But just to be aware, it doesn't represent the trend internationally. So every day from China, I'm getting the updates. Zhangjiala, it's gone up in price, okay? And the wafers are going up, the aluminium's going up, the glass is going up. I'm not telling you that to scare you, but I am sort of saying if you've got a long-term commitment with a builder to put 30 kilowatts on a service station in August, make sure you've got something that protects you in your contract so that you don't have to absorb that cost, because it could be quite a large jump at some point in time. I'm not saying that it will jump, but just that there's factors in play that suggest it could jump. And for that reason, we need to be prepared. So when we do solar farm contracts now, they're actually index-based in a lot of cases. So that means that if the silicon price goes up, the price for the panels automatically goes up. And if it goes down too, but it rarely goes down. We also have the currency in play as well. So we live in Australia, we're trading in Australian dollars, but the pricing of panels would be in renminbi or in US dollars. And if things affect the currency, you could see a flow through to Australia as well. So strike while the iron is hot at the moment, get yourself some low price panels while they're still around. And then as we move forward into the back end of the year, position yourself to show expertise. Be an expert with the Jinko Neo. Sell your customers a system that will last the distance. Sell your customers a larger system that can help them to install batteries to charge their EVs, things like this. And if there's any way that our distributor Austra or us as Jinko can help you with any training requirements that you might have or help you on how to differentiate yourself from your competitors, please get in touch with us, because we're keen to see you win, because when you succeed, that's when then we kill it. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I have on the screen today. Zack, just one question. Are we doing questions during the presentation, or is that at another time?
So after the event, they'll be able to, people in person will be able to ask questions.
Okay, so I've just been informed that after the event, there will be question time at the rear of the hall here. So we'll have some tables set up for each of the vendors. If you have questions online, I believe there's a chat box. You can lodge the questions and they'll be addressed later on. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance today and for giving us your time. Cheers.
Once again, thank you for Thomas for that presentation. Moving along, we'll next have Rex Wang from Growatt presenting. He will be doing, he'll be having a look at the latest batteries and inverters that are going to be coming to Australia this year. Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us today, so what we're going to do is we'll have a Zoom presentation, which will be projected onto the screen, and those watching live will get that streamed to the webinar. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, that's all good. Hello, everyone. My name is Rex Wang, and I'm the marketing manager of Growatt Australia. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be part of this great event, because now it haven't been in person even for the last, I think, 18 months already. And so for us, it's, we really valued our partner, Austra Energy, to give us this great opportunity. And today, I'd like to introduce a little bit more about our company, Growatt, and also our products for 2022, inverters and batteries. All right. Sorry. So before anything else, I'd like to talk a little bit more about our company, Growatt. Our company was founded in 2010. Right now, we are already 11 years old, 11 and a half years old. So just like Australia company, growing with Australia company, our company grows bigger and bigger. We start from 2010, and right now we have 3,000 employees, and 400 of the employees are R&D engineers. So obviously, and also our target for the 2024 is we can achieve more than 2,000 million US dollars in the sales in 2024. All right. So obviously, we are inverter manufacturer. We did pretty good in the residential inverter manufacturing. So obviously, we're the #1 residential inverter manufacturer in the world. And also, we are top 5 of the three-phase inverter suppliers in the world as well. And as all the inverter manufacturer, we have moved our steps into the energy storage system. So obviously right now we are graded top 2 energy storage inverter providers in the world. And we have did a fantastic job in Europe, in India, in China, and not to mention in Australia. And I'm pretty sure in the year 2020, because now 2021, we were still waiting for the number. But in 2020, we have shipped more than 60,000 inverters to Australia. All right, so there's two types of, as I mentioned before, for the energy storage solutions, we had two types of inverters and batteries for Australia. The first one is a concept called a battery-ready solution. And it is energy storage. It is battery-ready inverter, what we call a min 2.5 to 6K PL-XH inverter. It is battery-ready, and it is compatible with our high-voltage ARC-XH battery system. I'll talk about the details a little bit later. And also for our mature products, we have the hybrid inverter, what we call SPH 3000 to 6000. And also we have the miniature updated version called SPH 3 to 6K UP version. It has inbuilt UPS. And also the battery we use for the hybrid, our SPH hybrid inverters, the low voltage batteries. This one is brand new for Australia. And also our maturity, the GBRI 6532 and 31 lithium batteries, which have been already installed in Australia market for more than 2.5 years. All right, let's go to the details one by one. For the TL-XH inverter, for the last 1 year, we have recommended our distributors and installers to install this TL-XH inverter as a standard on-grid inverter. And what we are doing right now, and the user can buy this inverter with the on-grid inverter's price. When the lithium battery compatible with the TL-XH is ready, like now, they can seamlessly update their on-grid solar system into an energy storage system. Plug and play, very easy. All they have to do is buy the batteries and find an electrician, of course, find a qualified electrician, and do the cabling. It's very easy, 5 minutes work. All right, and another big selling point for our TL-XH solar system, it is compatible with 10 kilowatt solar panels, because now it can charge a battery with 5 kilowatt charge rate, and also feedback to grid or support your family load at 5K as well, as simultaneously. So obviously you can claim 2 times of the STC, but with one condition, there must be a battery on that side. Because now without battery, that's just a standard on-grid solar system. But as long as there's one battery on that side, it will be no longer an on-grid solar system. It will become an energy storage system. It doesn't have the 1.33 times DC oversizing limitation anymore. But as I mentioned before, you must have the batteries on site to get this DC oversizing for the panels. All right. Let's go to more details about our TL-XH inverters. It is AS 4777.2 2020 approved. It has a 30.5 ampere of the string current. Because right now the current of the panel is getting larger and larger. I think a Jinko's 440 is already 30 ampere already. So obviously, if you want to use, make the full use of such large panels, you have to choose the inverters with a large string current. And also, as I mentioned before, as long as there's a battery on site, you can get the DC to AC ratio for 2 times. And the AFCI, that's an optional component. As long as if your client really cared about the safety, you can add this component as well. And not to mention on the DC side is the Type 2 SPD DC protection on the DC side. All right, the batteries. The batteries we used for this TL-XH inverter is what we call ARC-XH. It already says approved. It's fully qualified to be installed in Australia. We already listed these batteries in South Australia home battery scan and also Victoria battery rebate. Both of this battery rebate are listed this battery. So it's modularized design. Each of the modulars 2.56 kilowatt hour. And the minimum size you have to put 2, and the maximum you can put 7 of them together. So which gives you like 18 kilowatt hour of the power capacity of the battery side. Most important part is the safety. Because lithium batteries, because now the Australia people, Australia government is really concerned about the safety of the lithium batteries. The technology we use is called LFP, which is considered to be the safest battery chemistries for the lithium batteries. We have used these lithium batteries in our old GBRI 6532, 6531 batteries. They have been installed in Australia, all around Australia for the last 2 years. It works perfectly with Australia harsh environment. All right, that's another inverter, our mature inverter, what do we call it? SPH 3 to 6K UP inverter. This one has mini updating from the old SPH inverter. First, we have increased the off-grid load capacity from 3 kilowatt to 4 kilowatt. And also, just like our other inverters, this one, the maximum current for the PC side, already been widened to 13.5 ampere. It means it works perfectly with large panels. And it has inbuilt UPS levels of the grid transfer, automatic grid transfer. So it should help you when black fire happens, you can still keep your laptop or your desktop computer running without losing of any of your data. And also it's VPP compatible. We already talked with some of the large VPP service provider in Australia. For this one, it's already been approved in their approved product list. Also, it has export limited functionality, but of course, you have to use the smart meter for this one. And this one is also being approved by the latest inverter standard AS4777.2 2020. It's approved. You can check it on CC's website, and you can check it on the South Australia Home Battery Scans website, and also Victoria Battery Rebate. You can get a rebate once you choose this inverter and our ARC low voltage batteries and the GBRI 6531 or 6532 batteries. We already done everything for you. All right, for the SPH is a single phase inverter, and there are many three-phase sites, especially in the remote area for Western Australia or South Australia. There's many sites with a three-phase input. How you can work with that? In Growatt, all you have to do is install three-phase smart meter. It will automatically solve the problem of the single-phase inverter working in a three-phase scenario. All right, then talking about the ARC low voltage battery. This battery definitely is a revolutionary product because now it's 2.56 kilowatt hour. Minimum you can only put one. No need just unlike the ARC XH, you had to put two. But SPH, you can even use one of these batteries. At a maximum, you can put 10 of them together, give you a capacity of 25.6 kilowatt hour, which we believe this power is enough for most of the Australia families' daily use for one day. And it's extremely safe. It's extremely safe with the LFP technology batteries. We still believe LFP is the best lithium battery technologies for the energy storage system. First one, it's safe. And the most important one, it is safe. And it's easy for installation. All you have to do is plug and play. You stack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we already prepared the internal tables, and we already prepared the external tables from the batteries to the inverter. And also there's an inbuilt DC switch at each of the modules for this one. That means no extra DC switch needed anymore. And it supports remote firmware updating. And also these batteries and all these batteries and hybrid inverters are compatible with VPP, Australia VPP, virtual power plant. All right, then I'll talk a little bit more about our off-grid solution. I understand in the market there's many off-grid inverters in the Australian market, but this one is different. This one is what we call SPF 5000 ES. This one you can even claim STC for this one. It's a CC approved, and which means you can check most of the, you can get a STC for this one. And also for the whole system, this off-grid inverter can talk with the diesel generators, can support a family load, and can talk with our ARC low voltage batteries, and even it can be used with or without a grid. All right, as I mentioned before, it is compatible with our ARC low voltage batteries, and the wide PV input voltage run up to as high as 450 DC. And it even has 1 MPPT to make sure you get the enough power generations during the off-grid mode. All right, and for off-grid inverters, the end user always care about the load capacity for off-grid inverters. These SPF inverters can be parallelized, 6 of them together. So obviously for single-phase three-phase side, you can put 2 of these SPF off-grid inverters in one phase, phase 1, 2, phase 2, 2, phase 3, 2. So it puts 6 of them together. But for single phase one, you can parallelize them 6 of them together, and which gives you the load capacity of 30 kilowatt. This is very large, 30 kilowatt of capacity. All right, this is our customized inverter, single phase on-grid inverters, and for Australia only. And this is what we call a min 7 to 10K. It is a single phase. It starts from 7 output from 7 kilowatt to 10 kilowatt. It has 3 MPPTs and 4 strings, which is very popular in Australia market right now. I understand in the market there are some of the large single phase inverters, they got a 3 MPPT as well, but they only have 3 strings. For us, it has 4 strings, easier for the end users and installer retailing companies to get their full 1.33 times STC for this one. And also the current for the the DC current is as high as 13.5 MA, which means they can handle the 400 and 500 watt panels easily. It's AS4777 2020 approved. And the most important one, one of the biggest localization for Australia is it supports either export limit, because now this one is single phase. For most of the Australia states, we have limited to at least 5 kilowatt for single phase. For this one, we have 2 options for you. One is the costly effective one, what we call it with CT. It saves the installation fee from the electrician, and also the material cost from us. Because now you can install a CT easy. And another one, if the client want to see the daytime load consumption, you're more than welcome to choose the smart meter. With the smart meter, you can see the daytime load consumption. And with the CT, all you can do is do the export limited. Limited is the 7 to 10 kilowatt to 5 kilowatt feedback to grid. All right, and there are some our smart management system. We have one system, what we call OSS system. I highly recommend all the installers, all the retailing companies apply for this OSS system account. Once you apply this OSS account, you can monitor all the inverters you bought from us, and and as long as you input your installer code, all these inverters you installed will be automatically added under your account. You can check all the working status for all these inverters. So if the client gives you a call, say, come outside, come to my house, check my inverter or my solar system doesn't work properly, rather than going on site, you can check from your phone first. Then you decide either to go on site or not. If you got questions, you can even ask our technical teams by the OSS system. All right, our Shine phone. We have, our Shine phone has been frequently updated. You can download them from either Google Play and the Apple Store. And every 2 weeks, I think normally is every 2 weeks, we will update this Shine phone app to make sure it can work with the latest function, and it has or meet the local requirement from Australia. All right, this is our OSS system. You can even, when you can show, make a display, a demonstration in your showroom for this one, like how many inverters have been working in your system. All right, so obviously there's some reference, local reference. On the left side is our very first generation Sun Gold 5000. This one is installed, deployed in 2010. It's 5 kilowatt single phase inverter with only 1 MPP, as you can tell. On the right side is our latest Growatt TR-X and most popular Growatt inverters in Australia. It's got 2 MPPT, much smaller and higher efficiency. So this is 2 generations of products in one photo, which proved that, which represents that our Growatt has been in Australia for more than 11 years. And we are happy to support Australia local business, local families, and do some contributions for Australia's renewable energy industry. All right, that's probably everything for today. If you got any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you. Zach, I give it to you.
Hi, thanks for that. So next we have coming up, Raimond from Dynamo Selling. So he's just actually left the room for a moment, but he'll be right back. Here he is now. So we'll get that set up. We're just going to set up his whiteboard, and we'll get going with that presentation. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, guys, are we all ready to go? We've got a few people waiting online, so if we can get everybody organised. Guys, you want to come across? I think we've got some schedules today. It's been a busy day, I guess. Guys in the back, everybody else ready to go? Just a couple of people over there. All right, let's get this show on the road. So, everybody's been into some sort of seminar today, obviously. You've been all engaged in the solar energy by Austra Energy Group, Jinko, and also Growatt. I'm going to help you more with the sales stuff today. I'm not sure who's who here or where you're all from, but we're going to ask some questions at the end if you like to ask questions. If you really want to be interactive, you can. But we've got about, what have we got, about an hour left, Zack? We might have a few extra minutes because of the placings. All right, so my name's Raimond Volpe. I'm the director of Dynamo Selling. Pretty much Dynamo Selling is my organisation. We've got trainers all around the country that train people. We've won a lot of awards basically on sales, customer service, communication skills. What we're going to do today, guys, is teach you how to sell batteries and teach you how to sell. So I want you to move away from selling technically because the brain doesn't like to sell or buy technically. Only 5% of decisions are made, proven from your limbic brain, logically. Everything's made by emotion. So I'm going to teach you how to do that today. We've only got about an hour, so if you really drill in, you'll get a lot out of it. And you're going to probably be surprised with a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you today. All right? Just a little bit about us. We've been around for 5-6 years now, add on COVID as well. Some of the companies that we deal with, I mean, there's just a number of them, but big companies around the world, Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard. So what you're about to learn today can be utilised for the rest of your life. You're going to learn how to communicate with people, how to basically build rapport in about 23 seconds. You're going to be able to read people, and you're going to understand how to sell, and you're going to understand how to push more business and to make people happy, including yourself. A little bit about my background. I've been a CEO of various pharmaceutical companies, one of them Novartis, which probably everyone's heard about now, and Pfizer as well, because of COVID. And then I moved into my own businesses. Obviously, this is my business now. I had a breakdown about 10 years, not 10 years ago, but around 10 years ago. And I started writing a book about the brain and trying to understand how people have breakdowns. I wrote this book. It's won 5 of the top 6 book awards around the world. It was a bestseller for 21 months in a row. And it's got nothing to do with sales. You're going to learn nothing about it today, but that was a lot of the inspiration about starting Dynamo Selling. So I know a lot about the brain and how people make decisions, and I'm going to impart that knowledge with you guys today. All right, so first off, how are we going to flow this through? We've got 5 areas. Can we all see properly? Is that in the way for anybody? Is that board in the way? Yeah, everybody's set? Okay, just let me know if anything's out of place. right? Because the board's over there. If anybody sits over here, we may not be able to see. So first things, mindset, emotional engagement, non-verbal assessment, objection handling, commitment. This probably means nothing to you right now, but it will by the end of this. Most important one about all this, the most important one, if this thing works, yep, is this. If you don't get this right, if you're going to go out there and try and sell solar panels or solar, whatever it may be, without selling the batteries, you're not going to sell it. If you go out there and try to sell something thinking it's hard, it's going to be what? It's going to be hard, right? Things can be easy if you know how. So we'll get your mindset right in the beginning. Okay, that's the first thing. Then we'll go into emotional engagement. That's going to open your eyes a lot. That's going to surprise you a lot. You're going to learn a lot about yourselves. The brain can change a lot, right? It's very malleable. It's the only organ within the body that keeps developing up to the age of about 89, right? So you can keep going with it. Non-verbal assessment, objection handling, and commitment. So let's go into the first start. So why? Give me some reasons why people won't buy batteries. When I look at that, can we just have all phones off too, by the way, guys? Total price is high, cost not effective. These are some of the things I've heard. We train companies in solar. I'm not an expert like you guys, but I know the general gist of it. People don't want to go and spend if they can't see the value in buying it. Well, that's a logical decision. If somebody goes out and buys a car and the car's $10,000 and they've got $10,000 to spend, why is it that sometimes they spend $15,000 and $20,000? It's because they make emotional decisions. Cars, investments on the house are all investments of emotions, right? So the good news is that basically customers are hungry to buy batteries because it is an investment. It's not a TV, right? It's not a TV. It is an investment. It's a long-term investment. And, you know, passion sells. If you're using technical terms and you're selling like you're selling to an engineer, you're not going to sell batteries. Because logically speaking, I've tried this with one of my colleagues that works for me. He's an ex-engineer. It's very difficult. You've got to really work hard. They don't understand that. But when you turn it around, we're going to show you how to do that today. So you must learn to sell the sizzle. If you go to a butcher shop and you want to buy sausages, you've all done that obviously before, for a barbecue or whatnot, we've bought sausages. If you go out there and you go to buy sausages and you want X amount of fat, X amount of protein, that's what you're going to get. If they talk about the sizzle, and they talk about the flavour, and they talk about how great it's going to be, and the people around it, and the whole atmosphere, you end up buying more. And you'll buy pork chops, you'll buy whatever else you want to put on the barbecue, right? That's the way selling is done. And this has been happening for many years now, but people haven't cottoned onto it. All right, so you've got to tap into trust, and you've got to tap into anticipation. The brain loves surprises. So do you understand what I mean by that? Who doesn't understand what I mean by that? If anyone doesn't understand, it's like a child. If you say to a child, guess what, I've got a surprise for you, the kid gets excited. As adults, we get excited too. But if you say to the child, hey, I bought this for you, the child goes, oh great, what else can I get? The brain works like that. So you've got to use a bit of anticipation. You've got to use a bit of surprise for these people, right? And you've got to use a bit of smarts. At the end of the day, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If you think you can't sell batteries, guess what? You're not going to sell batteries. But you can. All right, so customers are scared to make a mistake. So when you're using something like this, you can leverage off your brand. You can leverage off Jinko. You know, so when you look at it, customers are scared to make a mistake. They know the brand, but they're in the dark about solar branding. It's not a Kia versus Toyota, but you can leverage off that Jinko name if you want that branding, right? So you've got that. So you can differentiate yourself with quality with the Jinko name. Being that they've sold more panels than anybody else in the last 5 years, you can use that. Solar panels are a mature market. Batteries are early adopters. So if you don't know what early adopters are, it's something you want to get into early. All right? So internet. People that sort of held back and said, I'm not going to wait, I'm going to wait. Then they had to get into it later. Crypto. People getting into it later are missing out. Anything that's an early adopter, you can show people that they're going to have to get into it eventually. People have to buy batteries eventually. The more knowledge they've got early, the better fledged they're going to be later. Makes sense? But you can't go back to the numbers. It's like saying you're going to wait. That's fine, but how far do you want to wait? How long do you want to wait? And how far do you want to leverage? Is that making sense? Yeah? Okay, so if you keep moving forward, batteries, batteries set you up for a solid business foundation. I want you to just watch something, right? So I'm going to put this up here. Hopefully you can all see. Can you all see this side? Yeah, okay. So just watch this little chart. Now, we all understand what referrals are, right? That's what builds businesses. All my businesses have been built on referrals. And that's how you leverage your success. Just got to remember where I put my little clicker. But I'll come back. Hey? Oh, good. Thank you. I thought I'd put it over there. All right. So let's just say you're going out there and you got a client, right? This is the house. You come out here. This is you. And you come out here, right? Right? And you come out and you're selling solar panels. So what happens is you sell solar in to this one house, but no battery, right? No battery. This is what happens. This is basic maths, right? If you want to build a business and you want to leverage a business and you want to be successful, this works every time. So what happens is, let's just say you did a really, really, really good job selling that solar system and you get a referral. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to sell another solar system in and then another one, right? But you're not going to sell batteries. But if you sell, because every time they refer you out, why would somebody want to buy batteries? If I got referred by somebody else and I'd want to use you, and it happens because the minute they go up, people next door start asking and the people leverage around. So when you do that, like, why wouldn't you do this? All of a sudden, if you change the model, you know, this person here might go out and sell to 10 places, right? 10, and they're all just solar. They're just coming in, the referrals are just plodding in, right? But then all of a sudden, you got one other person that came to this seminar, right? And he says, oh, I'm going to listen to Ray today. And this person doesn't sell solar panels into the first person. Sorry, he doesn't sell solar panels into the second person. Sorry. And then he comes into the third one. Oh, no sorry here. I've actually sold solar panel plus battery. Right? What happens is that model replicates out. And every single person, and that's basic math, right, is going to leverage you for solar plus batteries. Does that make sense? So if you know how to do that, it builds your business automatically. And it's a matter of time. All right? It's a matter of time before this method. And the best salespeople are going to be doing this. Because, you know why? Because they can. Right? If you can't do it, you won't be able to do it. And if you can't do it, it's because you think you can't do it. But I'm going to show you today there's reasons why people are doing it. I mean, I spoke to one person, just one person about this, and it stood to reason that buying a new property, starting off from scratch, it's not that big of a buy when it comes to an overall property. It's getting more and more leveraged. People are starting to understand the value of it, okay? So the next thing is batteries also help you sell more panels. If you have to charge the battery, you need to sell more panels. And then obviously to sell the peace of mind. People buy Goodyear tires for peace of mind. It's peace of mind. You've got full control. You know, why not have the full control? Why not do the full thing? When you go and buy a car or whatever it may be, why not buy all the extras if it gives you that control? 67% of people now work from home or are leveraged from home from their work. And that was going back 6 months ago in the figures I'm about to show you. Now it's about 75%. Imagine power going down at home. There is peace of mind when you've got full competency around this. The full model is yours here. It's theirs. So it's that peace of mind. It's that control. Okay, so the psychology of your business. Early adopters, so they're buying for 3 reasons. Now, when we dissected this, and I had a chat with the guys from Jinko and also the guys from Austra, and when we looked at this, we looked at early adopters, and we found the main decision makers or buyers and influencers all in the one were men. Right? Now, when men make decisions, they make decisions first off around control. Right? Now, basically, I want to stick it to the man. I've got full control here. If you can sell in the control, it's a big leverage point. It's a big booster. Right? So one of them is you've got full control. Second one is status. You know, it's like buying a car. Batteries are like the turbo. Guys like to be able to go faster. Right? It's the bells and whistles. Can you see over there? You sure? I'll move this across. All right, and then just over here, but you probably can't see this one, but that's fashion, right? Men like the fashion. They like to be able to tell other people, yes, I've got the whole lot. The same person I spoke to has already told other people about the new buy that he's got with his brand new place in Heidelberg, right? And he's got the full kit. So they like to basically go out and promote themselves. So that's the male ego talking, but every male on the planet's got it. Right? And they like to do it. They enjoy doing it. Okay? So with their friends, with their colleagues, they can go out there, they can look smart, they can look cool. All right, so then you've got You understand all that so far? Do you understand how I put that all together? There's a bit of a story around that. So when you're speaking to somebody, when you're actually speaking to somebody, does anyone know how to make them confident in you? How does somebody know that they're confident, that they can trust you? Any ideas? Say again? Get someone to introduce you. That leverages you because it gives you that significance, right? Because then they know you. It gives you that certainty, right? So when you look at the formula for confidence, it's two things, only two things. If you want to be confident and you want to make people confident in you, it's significance plus confidence. So you walk into a house and you say to them, wow, it's a beautiful place. Or, geez, I love what you've done with the place. All of a sudden you're giving them significance, right? You're giving them some form of egotistical beneficiary. But the other bit on there is certainty. How can you give them certainty? Getting someone to introduce you in is certainty. Also, if you want to self-produce that, you want to tell people how I've got your back. I know what I'm doing. I understand the market. You try and build that trust of them. So you try and give them that certainty. If you can build certainty and significance, they've got confidence. If you give them confidence, you can sell them anything. This is how big ticket items are sold. All right? So it's about that confidence. So what does the prospect want to hear and feel, to feel significant and certain? If you go in there just talking about dollars and cents, you're going to walk out there with dollars and cents. And guess what the conversation is going to be around? How cheap can I get it? You don't want to sell cheap. You want to sell the value. Right? Does anyone know what value means to a person now? Any ideas? Value is no longer money. It's got nothing to do with money anymore. It's all about time. It's all about time now. Time is the most efficient thing people worry about. If you want to buy a box of matches and the box of matches cost you 30 cents, but you want to light a fire for your family inside the house producing that sort of energy, right? And you've got to go next door to a niche shop where they cost $5, or you've got to drive up the road where they're 30 cents, but you can make everybody happy within 5 minutes or get caught up in traffic, you do that. People worry about time. They look at how much time they save, and they also look at the value in that, right? So value is all about time. Now, okay, so how much time can people save? How long do they want to wait for batteries? You know, how long do they want to wait to learn this technology? It's all about time. If you can't sell via value, you're not going to sell. You're just going to be basically an order taker, right? And it's just going out there talking price. And all you're going to do is represent Amazon. Because if Amazon is a model based on price, it's all online. But you guys are humans. You've got an ability to do things, and that's where you can negotiate. And that's where the magic comes. All right, so significance and certainty, like some of the things in significance, nice house, beautiful car. You know, these are sort of some of the things people want to hear. You need to do this. They want to hear it, right? The second thing is the certainty. You're like, how long do you want to wait? You know, Jinko's a brand leader for over 5 years. Many years of experience. Solar growth is huge. Everybody's getting onto it. Bring out the facts. 70% of people are working from home now. You know, do you want to have the confidence around this? Tried, trusted, proven. You know, there's a big growth area here. Is it making sense? Certainty and significance are that important to build confidence. If you want to build confidence based on price, you're just going to have to get a rubber out and keep sharpening your pencil and keep going lower and lower and lower. People buy from people they trust, and they've got to feel confident with them. So that is your formula. So let's look at some of the reasonings around there at the moment, why people, you know, with batteries are selling batteries, and the reasons why. So rebates are available. Yeah, not bad, this money. Without a solar battery, you have to buy electricity from the grid at night. Isn't that what you have been doing to try to eliminate that? A solar battery will definitely help you reduce your grid energy demands. Yeah, okay, that's all dollar values. That's all dollar. Anybody can do that, right? Amazon can do that. You can go online and you can basically do that through Amazon. Amazon can't do this, right? That's what you guys do. Creating control, planning for the future, building value, looking after your family, right? Looking after your kids, being able to do that, giving them the confidence, fear and gain. These are the new areas. Like I said, if nothing changes, you keep going here. Nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to grow that quickly. This is where people grow. There's a bit of time involved here to learn this, but once you do, that's where people escalate. Make sense? And it happens in every industry. I mean, we train Microsoft, right? And the big model that Sash Nadell has put in is empathy, understanding what people see and view and trying to understand that. People see the big picture. When they're buying solar, when they're buying batteries, they're not buying energy resources. They're buying value around their confidence, around their security, around their comfort, around their future. So if you look at this, right, if you go back to the, over here, if we can take this, I've got any paper left, it'll be down here. If we go back to here, if you look at the brain, right, the brain's is in three parts. Say this is your brain. Can we all see that? You've got three parts of the brain. Your neocortex, your limbic brain, and your reptilian brain. Don't worry about any of that. This thing in the middle, your limbic brain, is where 95% of your decision making happens. 95% of decisions happen through emotion. So if you want to buy a house and all of a sudden the house is too much, but your kid's going, this is great, this is great, this is great, and the other child's saying, this is fantastic, this is going to be great, what do you want to do? You can't afford it, but the same token, you want to go and do it. You'll find the money to do it. Right? So it's based on the emotion. People don't buy with logic, it's backed up with logic. So 95% of the decisions are made emotionally and then backed up with logic. And that's how you have to sell. Right? This is, if you pick it up, right, if you pick this up, you'll see a big difference in your sales. And you'll see a big difference in your success. If you don't, if nothing changes, like I keep saying, nothing changes. You know, if a plant doesn't grow, it dies. But this is where you grow. This is where the brain grows with it. So you've got your subconscious mind, right, where decisions are made based on past experiences, intuition. This is it here, the emotions, like, you know, having an outage. What happens when you have an outage? People get sick potentially. If they are sick and you've got an outage and COVID's happening, what happens? The kid suffers, the child suffers, you suffer, everybody suffers, right? All these things can come into context when you use stories about these. I could go out and sell these products using this sort of fear tactics, and the brain looks into fear and pain and gain, right? So your conscious mind at the end, can you see that? The conscious mind at the end backs it up with logic. It goes, well, let's work this out. It's going to cost me, who knows, out of pocket $4,000 or $5,000. Divide that up over X amount of years, you know, $300 or $400 a year. Do I save any money? No, but at least I know at the end of the day I've got full control. If there's an outage, my kids are protected. If there's an outage, my business keeps going. If there's an outage, my boss can't complain. If there's an outage, I'm the man. Get it? There's a very, very big difference in having that satisfaction. Knowing that. Being that, and the rational brain then comes in and goes, actually it makes sense. I'm going to have to buy them anyway, so why not? And then you get your first person, and then this model happens where they start referring you out more and more and more, and the story goes on and on and on, and you use them to leverage off. That person that you've sold to, oh, why don't you speak to these people? I've done this previously because you've done it, right? You've already done it. So you start to build your model and you become professional. That's what a professional does. They build business through referrals. Car companies do it, they sell add-ons. Builders do it, they sell add-ons. McDonald's built a monster business, they sell add-ons, right? That's how they build businesses. You don't go out to buy one thing when you go shopping, you buy a basket of things. Nobody's got the time to worry about that. So basically that's the chart there, you know, no power, lack of control, I'm not protecting my family. These are some of the things you can instigate in conversation. And it takes time, but you get better at it, right? And you only get better when you try. You know, I mean, finance brokers do this all the time. They get people to go into loans all the time. And the best, I mean, my background is we had a finance business and it won Broker of the Year 2 years in a row with Allianz. And I never wrote a loan. I had all these loan writers writing for me. But we used tactics like this. And people would upsell. They'd go for a bigger loan, right? So then that's how you bridge a business. You know, fear of having a family crisis, like I said, business at work. It only matter of time before I've got to. And then the risk of failing. I mean, do you want to have this sort of scenario up here? Or do you want to sort of, you know, have the bit more of this sort of scenario up here? You know, the great dad, the provider, the guy that everybody loves, or the guy that's stuffed up. I made a mistake. I wish I'd get this kid to stop screaming, right? That sort of thing. So you've got to harness these emotions, and by harnessing these emotions, you nail down information, you point out these things. You actually point out these things. You don't have to convince them. All you've got to do is put it in their face. It's like buying a car. Oh, we had somebody else come in and they bought this car, but they also got this, and this is the satisfaction they had. Or somebody else came in, they bought this, and then 3 months later, gee, they were spewing. But you just put things out in people's faces and you start to leverage off this. You know, tell them stories. Tell them the story about the first person that bought this, that was hesitant, and they're happy as Larry now. You know, the same person I spoke to that works for my business, his cousin got this whole setup. Got the batteries, got the solar, got the whole lot. And his cousin's a bit of a show-off. And he's still telling people and bragging about it. But now the two cousins can't sort of come to a decision, like, because they've both got them, right? But it's a storytelling thing. Like, you can actually tell stories about how somebody's so happy. These are the sort of things you can leverage off. So it's fear and gain. Like we default to fear quite often, and it's based on loss or gain. You know, do you want to be that person that's in full control? Do you want to have full leverage, or are you scared of what's going to possibly happen? Like, who wants to have a power outage during COVID? No one. Who wants to have a power outage during COVID when it's really warm? Nobody. Is COVID going to happen again? Who knows? But there's a lot of fear there. Every time you say COVID, people go, shit, right? So it works. Fear works. The brain is leveraged to that. That's the way it's pulled. You know, we've got 8 emotions. The one we use the most is fear. But only 8% of the things that we worry about, Harvard have proven actually happen. The majority of them are fabricated in our heads. And you can do that with people. Like, you can actually do that. If I said to you, you know, I was at a place I was actually here last week, and there was a person outside, and you know, they were driving up and down. It's not a very nice place. There's some strange people that come around here. All of a sudden, you start to believe that, and you start to worry about things that might happen, right? I've put fear into you. Is it real? No, I just made it up. But you can bring in real things that are real. Oh, and like I said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. You want to sell a $10,000 car, you'll sell a $10,000 car. You want to sell a $20,000 car to somebody that's got $10,000 budget, you can do it. People will find the money if it's value. So confidence turns into trust. You know, like I said, anyone can sell a 15K car to a person that wants to spend 15K. You know, Mercedes is now moving to an automatic system where, you know, they basically can't leverage a lot of negotiating, and it's killing them, right? It's a whole new model. It's actually killing them because people are coming in, they can't leverage off any price differences in the car. There's no more discounting with Mercedes. So all the people are having to sell how? If you go to a Mercedes dealership in the city and you go to a Mercedes dealership in Sydney, there is absolutely no difference in price because it's an agent's agreement. So the salespeople have to learn the basics around this fear and gain. Makes sense? And that's probably a good thing for them. So, I mean, like, let's protect the industry and sell with purpose and value. Let's not go out there and be discounters. It's not Amazon. You want to build the business. You want to build the industry. You want purpose. And you want other people to spread the word with purpose. That's what it's all about. Because you believe in what you're selling. If you don't believe in what you're selling, what I'm telling you is not going to work anyway. Right? So, selling just on price devalues not only the customer, not only the brand, but it devalues you too. All right? So, it's time then money. So, we know now, as I said before, value is all about time. If you can leverage that time, no time wastage. You know, at the end of the day, no time off work. You know, your kids aren't going to be waiting in a hospital room. You know, all these sort of things happening. Mitigate that risk. So there's a statistic there. 67% of workers sometimes or always work from home compared to 42% pre-COVID. And this is a lot higher now. That was a while ago. So that was in June 2021. That's a lot higher now. So it's about these needs. Like, what are the needs? How can you make your potential prospects and customers feel safe? How can you know, how can you give them control? How can you do that? There's got to be ways around. These are all the ways that they need to be understood and accepted. You need to be able to leverage off the relationships you've had with other people that are happy with batteries. You need to show them the future. You know, if you said, look, this is the way we're going and this is the way we're heading, these are all the things they want to hear. And they need to hear. Because at the end of the day, you're not Amazon, right? You just buy online then. So it takes about, any questions on that? Anybody got any questions at all? I'm happy to take any questions. Yes?
You mentioned at the beginning that the control is more male, right?
Based on the statistics I've got from you guys, yeah.
You're right, most of my customers and most of my leads are male.
Yeah.
However, there is a fair portion who are female.
Yeah.
And literally, just before we were talking, I got a text saying, everything sounds really good, and I think I've built a lot of that before. And
Yeah.
That, and however, while I spend $3,000 coming on my roof,
Yep.
is less appealing than handbag.
Yeah, okay, so that was from the wife, yeah, or the lady?
That was the main contact.
From lady, yeah. So I'm going to show... Yeah, so what was your name? Alon. What Alon said is that he built rapport and he's been out, he's done all the right things, and then he's got a text message back after he thought he'd done everything possible to build rapport, and they've said, well, I can't justify paying this. It's, what did you say, more, my handbag costs more, or my handbag costs less. We're not going to buy a handbag. Okay, that's an easy one to fix. We're going to do this when we do objection handling afterwards. But I mean, I can answer it now if you want. That's not that difficult. I can move forward and answer this. So basically, that's objection handling. Right, so the first thing you've got to do is accept what they've said. So I'm going to move forward into the slide, and I'm going to show you the slide on that so that you've all got it. Because you can have this presentation. So this is it here. All right, so I'm going to do Alon's example, and I'll do it if I have any more paper. Here you go. So how long have you been talking to her? Couple of weeks.
Probably about a week ago, and then she sort of, sorry. I think I spoke to her maybe 2 weeks ago, and then just sort of went a little bit cold, and then tried to sort of follow up, and then I sent a text yesterday to a response saying, basically what I just said.
Have you spoken to her face-to-face or on the phone?
Face-to-face initially, yeah.
On Zoom or actual face-to-face?
Actual face-to-face.
All right, well, that's good. So you can probably get face-to-face with her again. Did you get with it?
Possibly.
Okay. So
yeah, I'd have to justify why I want to go out there.
You'd have a phone call with her then, right? Whatever you do.
Probably at some point, yeah.
What the first thing you don't do is text her back.
Right.
Right? The first thing you do is call her back. All right? Because if you text her back, that means it's not important. If somebody texts you and says, hey, how you going? That's not like ringing up saying, hey, the first thing you do is give that leverage to yourself. Give that superiority, that significance to yourself. The first thing is phone her back. Right? Phone back. So that you know you give a shit. At the end of the day, for you to sell properly, people need to know you've got their back. Remember that at the back of your mind. You've got to walk away and people got to know you've got their back. You're not there to take their money away, right? So the first thing that someone would say, what's the first thing someone would say when that happens? What would you say? Hey, what? Handbags suck, right? Who needs a handbag, right? But the first thing you've got to do is go, oh, you're going to be reactive, right? You cannot be reactive anymore, right? You've got to calm their brain down. The first thing you've got to do is calm their brain down. So what you do, the first thing is you accept, right? Along? So the first thing you do is accept. You're going to empathise with them. So what's her name? Laura. First thing you've got to do is give her significance, right? So you mention her name. Okay, Laura. And what you're going to do is you're going to accept what she said. You're going to agree with her, right? Because she's expecting you to say, oh, no, this is way better than a handbag. And that's what you're getting to, right? You've got to go the other way around, right? So you calm her down. Look, Laura, I totally understand, okay, I totally understand that it's not the right fit for you or you think your handbag's more important, blah, blah, blah. The next thing you want to do is repeat it, right? So you want to repeat this. Am I making sense here? Yes, we all understand this? Yeah? Anyone understand this? First thing you've got to do is accept it. At the end of the day, she's right. She's the customer, right? You've got to accept that. The second thing you want to do is repeat and clarify. When you repeat and clarify something back, it shows you understand, right? Most people just react back. Oh, but what kind of bag are you going to... And that's what they're expecting. You've got to shift the brain around, right? This is manipulation for a good reason. A lot of people, a lot of con artists use this to con people, but this is used for the right reason, right? It's manipulation, it's high-level negotiating, and I'm trying to show you that in 4 steps. Okay? The first thing you've got to do is accept it. So all of a sudden her adrenaline calms down. Her brain goes into normal sync. The second thing is then you've got to repeat and clarify. So Laura, when you say... So basically what I'm saying here is, Laura, when you say that the handbag's worth more to you than this, what do you mean by that? So what's she going to say back? What's she going to say back when we say that?
So I can't, the solar that I can't see, like it's on my roof, I can't see it. It's got no value right now for me. Sorry. So it's got no value right now, whereas a handbag I'm seeing the benefit of while I'm walking down the street.
We'll hear that. So Alon's come out and say, well, I can't see it. I can't see the value right now. Okay, so then you dissect it. Then you say, okay, so when you say X, Y, Z, and she comes back and says that, then you go to part 3. So you isolate it, right? So you've got her to repeat that. So then in step 3, you go, okay, so what you're saying here, Laura, is it's not that your handbag is more important to you, it's that you can't see the value. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You can't see the value. Okay.
Yeah.
Can't see value. So now you've got her at a point where you say, okay, so you've got her now, right? You've got her. You've got to, okay, so you can't see the value. So then you show where the value, right? And that's when, where's my clicker? So that's when you come into this bit here, which I've been trying to show you the whole way through, and that's when you frame the pain or gain, right? So just watch what I do here. So in here, you frame the pain or gain. So Laura, tell me, I mean, when it comes to value, you know, has she got kids?
No.
No kids. She lives alone?
Husband.
Husband. Her and husband. Her and husband. Do you know what she does for a living?
No, but she works from home.
You've got to learn that. That's the first thing you want to learn. You want to know what they're doing for a living, right? You want to know a lot about them, okay? The more you learn about them, the more rapport you're going to build. When you build high-level rapport, it's very difficult for someone to talk about the handbag, right? I'm going to teach you how to get rapport in a second, but we've just gone for this for you, right? So next thing you say, okay, do they work from home? Now, if she says yes, okay, you work from home. Well, have you ever had an outage? Yes or no? Have you ever thought about what happens if you have an outage? The repercussions. All of a sudden, you start to put fear into her, and she starts to work out the value. Does it make sense? But you move away from the handbag, and you go and you dissect the bit about value. Because you said it, right? You said it. I just dissected what you said. I can't see the value in it at the moment because it's on my roof. So you dissect that bit, you'll get it. When you do this process, you'll get it in every single objection, and then you go back to that. And then you just leverage the positive and negative around that. Make sense? So that's what you've got, but you've got to get her on the phone. You cannot do it on a text. And you've got to be persistent. Maybe you don't get her on a phone call, but to the next person, I mean, there's two things that Elon, am I saying it right? Yeah. Elon, there's two things Elon can do here, right? First thing, he does this. Oh, okay, I've lost that deal. Second thing, okay, I'm going to ring her up. So what happens on the first deal? What happens with the first offer, the first deal? The first deal was I'll opt out. The second deal is I'm going to go in there, I'm going to try it. But what happens on the first one if you opt out? What's that? No sale. No sale. But not only that, not only no sale, watch. What did we say value was? What's value? Time. How much time have you spent with her? Quite a bit of time. How much, roughly?
It's like 2 hours.
2 hours. Did you go and you went and you drove to see her?
Yeah, make it 3.
So make it 3. That's 3 hours, right? You're never going to get back again in your life.
Yeah.
So if you look at this model that I showed you before, the referral model. Can you see this? You probably can't see this here, can you? Can you see this? Okay. If you look at this referral model that I showed you before, where you go from person to person to person, if you lose 3 hours here, and you lose 3 hours here, and you lose 3 hours here, and you lose 3 hours here, that's a few days worth. It's a bit of effort, right? So it's not worth losing those 3 hours without using some sort of structured process, right? And you'd be surprised how often this happens, because 90% of salespeople give up. They go, that's too hard. So they go to the easy one. Now, the easy one is over here. The easy one got told to buy solar because his brother's got it. But he's very difficult in selling batteries too. Because he's the low-hanging fruit. It's the difficult ones you want. So if you get Laura, isn't it? If you get Laura across the mark, right? If she's difficult, what's it tell you about the people that she knows? Yeah, they're going to trust her, and they're difficult too, right? And you're going to get into a difficult market. And then you're going to get lots of difficult people, and difficult people talk to a lot of people. The low-hanging fruit don't give a shit. It's the difficult people that go shit, because most people give up with the difficult people. Most salespeople go, this is too hard, let him go to somewhere, I'm wasting my time. But you've already wasted 3 hours. Does that answer your question? So that's the way to do it. We've just done objection handling the other way around, but it's probably good that we use an example. Okay. Use the mic. A bit better? Just test. All right. So does that make sense, guys? Using that process, the first thing you've got to do is accept it. They're right. Calm them down. They're going to be really surprised. The brain loves surprises. That little kid that when you said you got a surprise, the kid starts to salivate. Just like a dog salivates when you've got a surprise for it. The brain will be shocked when you start to accept it. Okay, I understand. Yeah, I get this. Let me get a good understanding of this. You start to repeat and clarify stuff. So you start to understand them. And then you start to isolate things. And, you know, if you go back 25 years, 30 years, That's called projection selling. They never did this. Everyone sold on price. And guess what happened 30, 40 years ago? There was no internet. There's a lot of internet now. People have got all the information they need. They know about batteries. They know about solar. But you know what they don't know? The emotions. AI, because we deal with AI companies, the one thing AI can't replicate is the emotional brain. But you can do it. Amazon can't do that, right? Make sense? Okay, so if we go around, now the other thing you said was about building rapport, right? I'm really keen to show you guys how to build rapport. So if I went up to, this guy here, if I went to you and I went, how many seconds was that? How many seconds was I staring at you, roughly? How many? 2 seconds. But does it feel comfortable? No. So it's 2 seconds can feel uncomfortable. Imagine, thanks for that. Imagine 23 seconds when someone isn't comfortable with you. It's a long time. If I was staring at him for 23 seconds, he'd probably walk away. Maybe not, right? But it's difficult. So the brain opts out after 23 seconds. They've timed it. It goes too hard. It actually takes 4 seconds for the brain to make a snap judgment, right? It goes, somebody walks in, they go, okay, dickhead, or okay, silly, or they start swearing, okay, idiot, you know, okay, don't like this person, or okay, nice person. It takes about 4 seconds to make a snap judgment, but it takes a full 23 seconds. So if I, so can you come up here? Can you come here for a second? So what's your name? Rob. So Rob, just say Rob comes into my house, he's at the door, you want to come, we've got an appointment, opens the door, g'day, how are you? So all of a sudden I've made a snap judgment. Then we go, shake your hand. If you came with COVID, you're not going this, right? You come in, we come in, and then all of a sudden, so how have you been, Rob? You've been well. All of a sudden I'm making up my mind. And after 23 seconds, I know without, thanks mate. I just wanted you for a second as a prop, right? So the brain takes about 23 seconds before it goes, I want this guy out of my place. Just like you felt uncomfortable before, the brain goes, I'm uncomfortable. So you've got to make people comfortable straight away. Does it make sense? You can't do it. It's like going on a blind date. I don't know if anyone goes on blind dates anymore, but when you first meet somebody for the first time, and you sit down, let's say it's a colleague of yours or a new boss or a new colleague or a new girlfriend or whatever, right? And the first thing they say is negative, all of a sudden the conversation goes down. You need to have the conversation great at the beginning, and the 2 points that a person remembers in your meeting are what? Who knows? When you go and see a client, what are the 2 points they remember the most? That when you first get there and when you leave, right? So if you don't get the first bit right, you're never going to get to the end. So the first bit's important. So you've got about 23 seconds to build rapport, all right? So when you look at that, when you look at building rapport, it's going to be hard to do this with the mic, but anyway, we'll give it a shot. When you look at words, right, how important are words? How important are words? You got the answers there. Yeah, but most people think words are important. They're not that important. So if I said, what's your name? Brian. Brian? Brian, I want to sell you this clicker. It's a really good clicker. It's going to help with your solar panels. Right? That's words. If I say, Brian, I want to sell you this clicker. It's a really good clicker. It's going to help with your solar panels. That's with my tone. If I say, Brian, I really got to show you this clicker. It's a really good clicker. It's really going to help with your solar panels, right? See the difference? When you use body language, right, when you use your physiology, there's 55% more impact on your communication. That's why I said to Alon, not to text her back. Because if you text her back, it's just words. It's very easy for someone to say, no thanks. It's very, like, we train a lot of millennials, right? I've got lots of trainers that train, and the thing that they can't understand is the millennials of today can't understand why it's so important to speak face-to-face, because they're all texting. You can't do it with words. So physiology is so important, and the tone is also important. So if you're walking into a place and you want to give somebody significance, you say, gee, it's a nice place you got here. As opposed to, gee, it's a really nice place you got here. Gee, did you do a renovation up there? That's very different, right? You come alive. So it's a big difference. Like I keep saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If you keep going the old way, it's the same way. It's a one-way path, right? So 38% is tone, 55% is body language. And I'm going to give you a couple of little tips here, right? So can you come out for a sec? I'm going to show you something. And Rob, can you come out for a sec? That's what happens when you sit at the front, guys. I don't know how I'm going to do this and hold it, but can you hear that? No? So if I'm speaking to, I'm going to show you a little trick, right? Let's just say I'm talking to the two of them. Say you're mates and you live together, you get in the solar play, you want to get solar in, and I'm talking to you. What am I doing at the moment? So you stand here, and so what's your name? Shingy. So Shingy's here, Rob's here. So I'm talking to both of them. Have a look at what I'm doing, right? So a really nice place you've got here. So see his hands? They're in his pockets. You know why they're in his pockets? Because my feet are facing here. Now, if I open it up, if I turn around, I say, so, nice place you got here. It's very difficult for him to keep his hands in his pockets, right? So what have I done? What have I done? Yeah, but how did I include him? Who can pick it? I'll do it again. So I'm speaking here to Jinky, and now I'm speaking. So what have I done? Yeah, but one thing. Come on, guys. There's one thing I'm doing. On my feet. Watch my feet. So here, my feet are there. All I've done is that. 1 foot on each person. If where your feet goes is where your energy goes. If you don't face somebody with their feet, you're going to lose the energy, right? That now he's moving because that's happening. But before he was stationary, right? It's very easy to, because he's left out here. This is all body language, right? And if you just go, if you don't know this stuff, like I said, nothing changes, nothing changes. Okay? So that's one thing. The other thing is this. If I'm talking to Jinko, Jinky? Shinky, I called you Jinko. Shinky, my apologies, Shinky. So I say, Shinky, I want you to go over there, and then from there, Shinky, I want you to go over there, and then from there, I want you to go over there. So what am I doing? What does it look like I'm doing? Yeah, but I'm also telling him what to do. Now, watch what happens now. Shinky, I'd like you to go over there, and then potentially over there. So what's the difference? My hand's up. When your hand is up, you're asking somebody something. When people can see your hand, you build trust. Right? If I walk into a conversation like this, there's no trust, right? When you can show your hands, so it's all about this openness. It's all about these open gestures. Oh, this works, right? This is the stuff that sort of works. You need to be able to understand this. Otherwise, people get put off, and you don't want to leave people out. So I'm just showing you how effective it is when you're using body language, not only when you're speaking, but when you're engaging. Thanks, guys. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, so any questions on that? So body language is important. If you go in there and you try selling like an engineer to an engineer, you're just going to sell on price. All right? So, and you don't want to do that. You want to sell on value. All right, and then when you look at body language, if you look at somebody's face, right, how do you know if somebody doesn't like you? Any ideas? It's not up there, by the way. How do you know if someone doesn't like you? They could be nervous. They could be nervous. But if somebody doesn't like you, there's a little trick, right? If you look at the face, if you look at the human face, a little trick, right? So you can use this for the rest of your life. Just don't get divorced because of me. You put this up here. If you look at the human face, 2 eyes, nose, mouth. When you look at beauty and what's attractive, right, it's all about symmetry. If you've got a horse and it looks good, it's about symmetry. It's about the way it runs, the way it looks. Same with the face. What's the most symmetrical part of a face? No. Next. Who said lip? Yes. What part of the lip? Top. Right? That's why so many women and men go and get their lips done. I'm not sure if this is working now. This one's gone too. Anyway, I'm going to scream. So what happens is this part of the lip here, right? This is your lip. Test. Gone. It's all right. This part of your lip here is the most symmetrical part. Now, when the lip goes up a little bit, somebody doesn't like you. So, Shinky, if I'm speaking to you, and I go, yeah, that sounds good. I really like the idea of getting batteries. Right? So my lip's gone up a little bit. It means I don't want him, I don't like him, I don't trust him. But if it's a real smile, if I do like him, I'll smile, and it'll be symmetrical. These are little things we pick up, right? So all I'm saying is when you go to see somebody and you're talking to them, if they start to adhere to you, if you see them moving away, if somebody moves away from you, they're not getting interested. They're moving away for a reason. You've got to hone in on what's making them interested. And when their ears prick up and they do those sort of things, you've got to jump in. Right? So when somebody's comfortable, muscles of the face are relaxed, pupils wide. The other one, psychological discomfort, forehead frowned, eyes squinting, chin tucked, eyes covered. I mean, these are little things. You've got to watch the body language. You've got to watch the face. But what I want to show you now is there's 4 types of people, right? So when you look at the DISC model, who's done the DISC model before? Yeah, so we use EQ with this. We use emotional intelligence. There's 4 types of people. There's your D-type person, your I-type person, your S-type person, and your C-type person. And you sell differently to each one of those. So the D-type person basically is the person that's results-oriented. You rock up to their house and they say, yep, come in. There's no stories. There's no how's your day going. There's no, how's your backyard. They don't want a conversation. They just want bang, bang, let's get it done. Right? That's your D-type person. Then you've got your I-type person. Right? They're more engaging. They're happier. They're smiling. Right? They're a different type of person altogether. Then you've got your S-type person, which is steady, and your C-type person that's compliant. Now, you can have this presentation, but the thing that you'd want to take away from it and understand is if you're selling to a D-type person, right, that person wants you to be there quickly, get in and out of there quickly. So if you start talking for a long time to a D, you're going to opt out of your own conversation. Does that make sense? To an I-type person, they smile a lot, they wear clothes like this that are bright eyes, right? These people like a friendly conversation. They smile a lot, they talk a lot, they build stories a lot. It's a different type person. There's 65% of people that are walking around in this room or anywhere are S's. So they're a bit slower, right? They're basically easy to understand. They're sincere, they're patient, they're loyal, right? And they want slow decisions. You might need to go and see them 3-4 times, right? The person that you were speaking to before is extremely direct. She's a D-type person. I can tell you right now because she sent you a direct message, right? And it was a short message. So she's a D-type person. So you need a direct conversation with her. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, and then you got your C-type person, which is extremely compliant and accurate. These people you probably may not be dealing with as much. But which ones do you deal with the most, do you think, when you go see people? D's? Okay, so which ones do you reckon are the hardest to deal with? No. They're the easiest. Who said no? What's your name? Tony. Why are they the hardest? Why aren't they the hardest? No, the D's will tell you straight out if they like it or not. They'll tell you straight out. The S's will beat around the bush. All right, so when you understand this model, you build rapport pretty quickly. When you know that this is science, basically, right? So when you start to understand this model, it helps you engage and get that rapport quickly. All right, and if they are S-type people, you've got to go a bit slower. All right, and this is basically when it comes to the objection handling before, this is what we had before, the objection handling techniques. How are we going for time there, Zack? All good? Okay, so this is where we're, but do we all understand this? When it comes to somebody rejecting you or potentially rejecting you or putting up a brick wall, I'm going to ask you a question. How many people get a sale straight away? Never. So if you came and saw, what's your name? Goran. Say you came and saw me and I said, Goran, I love everything you say. Yeah, I love everything you're saying. Yeah, it's been good. Thanks very much. I'll come back to you in a couple of weeks, but thanks, you've been great. Is that a good result or a bad result? So why is it a bad result? No objection, there's nothing. It's a dead end. It's like, thanks for coming. I've got all this information. I'm going to go to somewhere else. Now, if I say to Goran, look, this is a crock of shit. I'm going to be, this is a D, right? I'm being a D. This is a crock of shit. This is not good at all. This is not good at all. It's too expensive. Don't waste my time. Let's look at doing something cheaper. Is that good or bad? It's good because you're going to have the same issue as Elon over there. You're going to be able to leverage value. So that's when you use this, right? It takes practice, takes technique, but it works. If you know how to do it, it works. Make sense? So the other thing is when you want to get commitment, when you want to get somebody over the line, what's a good way of getting them over the line? If someone's going back and forth, they're like, oh, I'm just not sure. How can you get them over the line? Any ideas? Yeah, good, you can read. That's right, but tell me exactly tell me, what does that mean? If you, like real estate agents do this all the time, the good ones do this all the time. They'll ring you up and say, right, I've got documents organised, I've done this, I've organised photographers, I've done this, it's really difficult to turn the car around and do a U-turn then. right? If you keep reminding them what you've done, I've sent the documents, I've gone back, I've done this, I've sent that, it's very difficult for people to opt out. So when you use this technique, it's strong, it's worthy, it works. Like you had 3 hours with this person, right? All I'm saying is Elon had 3 hours with this person. You want to get the best value in those 3 hours as possible. So a lot of the techniques that I've given you today can leverage a lot of value to these people in the 3 hours. Because one thing that we know is about value is what? It's what? Time. And everybody wants more time. We can't afford to lose time. We want to use that. So that's one way to basically get that appreciation there. The other thing is creating urgency. You know, like how long do you want to wait? Like how long do you want to actually wait? There's a lot of people jumping on the board and a lot of people are doing this. You know, this is the way things are going. There may be a shortage in sales that are increasing dramatically each year. You know, we may run out of batteries the way things are going. Yeah, it all of a sudden creates urgency. You try booking in somewhere to a hotel. You can do that now, right? You go to a hotel and you book in and they say, oh yeah, we've got the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we've got, it's completely free. And you go, okay, no worries. So then you can start price matching. But you bring up about in a day's time to book and they say, oh, we've only got Sunday available for you. Oh, I'll take it. Everybody wants what they can't have. So you've got to create that urgency. Right? However you do that, it works. So it's a bit like the internet. The people that got in early, you know, this is one of the greatest things on earth. Why would you want to wait? It's inevitable. These are all the things we've spoken about before. Save time, get it all done now. These are other areas, right? But this is all about creating urgency. Sorry, go back. Yep, this one. Save time getting it all done in one install. Essentially, that's everything in one nutshell. You know, let's do it now. So, I mean, we train so many different industries. I'll give you one example that's got nothing to do with what you do. It's, they fix trees, right? I forgot the name, they're arborists, I can't remember what they do. One of my trainers was telling me the story the other day. They go out there and they move trees. They pull trees out and they move them, right? And they're trying to say, how can we get our average sale up from $700 to say $1,000 to move the tree? So anyway, I dissected this with one of my trainers, and I said, well, isn't there other things to do when you go out there? And they say, oh yeah, they can pull the branches out, they can pull the roots out, but they don't always want to do that. And I go, well, why not? If it's got to be done, they say we'll do it in the future. And that's when I say, look, we're here now. Do you want us to come out again in the future or do it now? We can do it all in one hit. And then you build the value. You know, your kids are going to be running up and down here and not have to worry about falling over the branch or falling over the root. The branches are going to be off your window so that you've got more sunlight coming through. And the tree's going to be gone. So you build the value in, and all of a sudden they've gone over $1,000. So you can do it all in one hit. That's another one. But I mean, you do that as a top-up, as like a basic rationale. You do all this other stuff, all the things you could be losing, all the things you could be gaining by having the batteries in a complete way, and then you use that at the end. But it is your decision. At the end of the day, if somebody says to you it's too expensive, you do have the option to walk away and try someone else. But you won't get that time back. All I'm saying is once you try the techniques and you do it and you start getting it, you'll have confidence in yourself. You won't be able to stop. And you'll get that different leverage over there where you go S to S. All these different referrals will all be with batteries. It'll be given. Yes. What's your name? Andy, yes. Okay, so I'll repeat that so that we can all hear that it's online. So Andy's asked, urgency is one thing that we've spoken about to gain commitment. When would you pitch that? In the early stages, in the middle, or at the end? Any ideas out there? You can temperature check. It's called temperature checking. Yeah, temperature checking all the way through. But you could not create urgency unless you've built trust. And you've got to create confidence. If you try and create urgency at the very beginning, then you sound like a used car salesman. You got, or like your grand sale, Franco Cozzo's last sale. You sound like you're discounting, right? And you sound like you're pushy. Once you've got the confidence, and once you've got them halfway there, right? So Elon's got to go back to that lady, and he's got to start speaking to her. You don't want to create urgency yet. You want to create the game, the fear. Put a little bit of fear in there. Once you get their body language going and you see them thinking, You see them coming closer. You see them understanding. You see them reciprocating. And they're starting to come closer. Then you can do it. Oh, look, there's one more thing. Look, if you did want to do it, would you want to do it now? So this is called an if close, right? So this is pretty much, if you move forward, this is an if close. So if you wanted to do it, let's just think about this, Mary. If you wanted to do this, would you want to do it now, or would you want to do it in, how far out would you want to do it? We could probably do it in about 3 months. That's okay, no worries. Look, I'll note that. But the only problem with that is that there might be a shortage. See, I've already know she's already said 3 months. She's already keen. That's when okay, well, how long do we have to wait? Then you've got her. Because you want the sales cycle to come from here to here. Because where you lose the clients, do you know when you lose a client? The minute you walk away. The minute you walk out of their house, the amount of interest that you've created starts to dissipate. So you want to strike while the iron's hot. Does that make sense? Yeah. So urgency is definitely important, but you've got to do it at the right time. It's the nail in the coffin at the end. So these are the two methods you can use: test closing, temperature check. Do you want to see some batteries? Do you want? Okay, you obviously don't want batteries, but can I show you some batteries to show you how they work? Can I give you an indication of how they work? You start temperature checking early. You start test closing. Well, you get them leverage. You get them into it. And then if the if closes work best when prospects want discounts and additional services and all that sort of stuff, that's when your if close works. So if you got it like this, could we offer that? That's when they start to work. If closes are very, very, very powerful if you've got a little bit of trust. You just need a little bit of trust and confidence. But if you can't get that trust and confidence, it will fall away. And you've got to do that with your hands, with your feet, with your body language. We've only got an hour to do all this, but at least you've got some insight today, There's emotion you've got to harness. Number one, you've got to believe in what you can do, right? You've got to believe in yourself. If you listen to the next guy that goes, it's too hard to sell batteries, it's not going to work, right? You want to build a model where everybody's referring you solar panels with batteries, right? You want it automatic. That's what brokers do. Finance brokers that are good get other finance brokers that are good working for them, they get good clients. Once you have one good client, you get lots of good clients. That client's going to build your business. So look after the client. So those 3 hours that you're spending, make sure you utilize those 3 hours, because you're not going to get it back, neither are they. And look, when it comes to the getting commitment, there's 3 steps. You've got to build rapport, right, in the beginning. Right, you must build that rapport. You've got to do everything possible to build rapport. Understand what profile they are, what they need, what they're seeing, what they want. Give them the significance and certainty. Do all that in the beginning. Then you've got to explore the operation, the whole thing, and then you get their commitment at the end. And just in summary here, I didn't have the last slide. But just in summary, if you look at the big totality of all this, if you look at 3 highlight areas, number one, believe in the purpose here, right? You want to believe in this. You can do it. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Believe in it. And if it's going to happen, you might as well start doing it now. Yeah? And if you start doing it now, guess what? You become one of these pioneers of it. Because you're going to have to start it eventually. And the people that start early always get in early. And they win early. We train gyms. Jim's Mowing, Jim's Group. And you see some of the people that are franchised that got in early. They've built empires, but they got in early. They believed in methodologies early, right? It's franchise models, reference models, things like this. It's all about the stage, So as we look into the future, leaders will be those that empower others. And if you look at Maya Angelou, what she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Thanks, guys. Do you have a question? Yeah. Did someone have a question? No? Any questions? We've had a few questions today. Yeah, if I'm going to write, I'm going to put this clicker down so I can use one hand. Yes, sorry, did you have a question? I'll repeat it. You scream it out. Yeah. Okay. In your scenario, because it's a high... So the question was... Okay, so the question... What was your name? Ahmad. So Aman asked, objection handling, obviously the technique that I've showed made some validity. There was some value in that, and there's a process. When do you opt out? When do you stop doing that? Okay, when do you give up? So it's a good question. So I normally say never, because I like professional persistence. I don't think you need to give up. I think people will tell you. At the end of the day, if you've tried everything possible, because this is a big deal. You're not selling a television, right? You're not selling a $500 television. It's something for the rest of their lives, right? So you objection handle to the point where they say, look, I really appreciate everything you're doing, and I can see the value of it. And you get them to that point, and then what you do, you don't give up. You say, okay, you can see the value in it, that's fine. How about we meet up in, say, 6 months' time? How about I give you a call in 6? Don't ever lose that client. No, that client is worth a fortune for you. Every email address is worth $1 on a database, right? So that client is worth more than $1, right? People on databases pay for these things, right? Don't ever give up on that, because that person can role play back to you. So I don't think you should give up. I think you should let them pass the baton. But I mean, it's completely up to you. I mean, if the person's wasting your time, then you can opt out. But look, the thing is, people don't do that anymore. People haven't got time anymore. They're time poor. They won't answer your calls. That's when you can give up. When you've rung 6 or 7 times, then you can give up. Right? Yep. Any other questions? Yeah. What's your name? Ivan. Ivan. Yeah. Okay, so there's 2 parts. So Ivan said in the first one, they don't have $5,000. Yep. In the second one, there's another product that's $2,000 cheaper. So they do have $3,000. But $200 cheaper. Okay, so that's 2 separate, can't be the same person. Because if somebody hasn't got 2 separate people. Okay, so on let's do the first one. So if someone's hasn't got $5,000, right? But they've got the money for the solar system. First of all, you need to break it up, how much it's going to cost per year, and show them. And then you've got to show them the whole. I mean, $5,000 is not a lot of money these days when it comes to someone's investment. So, for argument's sake, they probably do have $5,000, but they're saying that to get a cheaper deal, right? If they've got the money to spend on that, they've probably got the money to spend on that. If they don't have $5,000, they legitimately don't have $5,000, you'll know. But if they don't have $5,000, you need to go back into the value. Let's have a look at what this means to you. Let's look at how important, the question I'll be asking, how important is it to have complete control? Is it just saving money, or do you want to have complete control of your energy in your house? Do you want to have complete control? And if they ask that question, they answer that question, and they answer it honestly, if they say, well, no, we don't really care, then you've probably got an issue. Then you've got to worry about that again. But most of them want full control. Make sense? So then you isolate, like I said before. Okay, so you do want full control. Okay. So for $5,000 for the rest of your life, or next 10 years, right? You've got full control. What's that worth to you? That's $500 a year. $500 a year for full control. Divide that up. How much is that per week? $100 a week. For $100 a week, you've got full control. You can break it up like that. But you've got to bring the element of control back in. It's the emotional thing. If you stick to the price, you're not going to do it. It's a waste of time. You've got to work. If someone says, I don't have $5,000, you're not going to give it to him. You've got to work on why they should get $5,000. And it's not hard to get $5,000 if someone believes in it. Like, if you were sick and you needed $5,000, you'd find it. It's different if it was $50,000. The second question. So the second question you said was somebody wants another product $200 cheaper? So they're going to spend $200 less. So they're paying $5,000 with you and $4,800 with someone else. Okay. So in that situation there, first and foremost, you've got to build a lot of rapport at the beginning. Okay, that's the first thing. If you haven't built rapport, which I've showed you now is so important, the one thing you've got to try and get into their brain is that you've got their back. You've got to let them know that you've got their back. You're there to support them. If anything ever happens, So they start to build this confidence. If they've got the confidence, that $200 will go away. So if I'm going to go and buy a car for $10,000 here, and I'm going to go buy the same car over here, and it's $9,000, but I don't trust that person, I don't like him, I'm going to go here. Because it's ongoing. I've worked it in my head that the service on that's going to cost me a fortune. So you've got to build that rapport early. For $200, it's about building that confidence. Right? And you've got to show them that you've got their back. You are there for them all the time. My phone is on all the time. Give me a call whenever, even on the weekends. It will start to push and dissipate the $200 because people want the service. That's the value. You're not Amazon, right? You're a human being. So, and that's what they want. They want to build that value around you, the person. If something happens, I can pick up the phone and speak to Ivan. Ivan's going to help me. You know, if it's the middle of the night, Ivan's going to help me. You've got to show them that. You know, I've got your back. I don't know who this other group is, and I don't really care. But then you can start looking at value. Like, the batteries exactly the same? Are they identical? Okay, same brand. So then it's about you. It's about what you can leverage. Right? It's about the relationship with you. I will do this. I will do that. I will do this. Show them everything that you've done. Right? And then create the urgency. That's how you do it. Sorry, what was your name? Gaurav? Yeah, Gaurav. Customer? Yep. Mm. Yeah. It's the same. Is it the same example? Oh, the third. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 Yep. Okay. So, got it. It's an easy question to answer, right? So Gaurav's asked, he said, this is common, right? So you've got one person going out there that's trusted, you've got somebody else out there that's just competitive, and then you're just lingering. You're neutral. You want to try and get them on board. Yeah, but there's no trust with you. Is that right? One guy's already built the trust. Okay, so one guy's already built the trust. Somebody else is just competitive, but you want to go in there and get the business. All right. So first things first, he needs to build. So what is Gaurav selling? Anyone know what Gaurav's selling? Himself. Who said himself? Himself. Right? Very good answer. He's selling himself. What is it that people want when they've got people, first of all? What do they want when people like Gaurav is coming to them? What do they want from that person? Value. What's value? The time, right? So you need to be able to answer things straight away. So if you ring them back straight away. MIT, do anyone know who MIT University are? They're the #1 university for 11 years in a row now, globally, right? Stanford second. They did some research on this. And what they found is that if you get a lead, we did this with the gyms group and we proved right. If you get a lead and you answer the lead within 5 minutes, there's 1,000% difference in getting commitment to someone that answers it in 6 minutes. So people value that because it's like the sausage. They want it while it's hot. So you need to do that. You need to be reactive, be really quick, be really good servicing, extremely good follow-up. Otherwise, you'll never beat the other person because that's what people lack. And if you're not busy, you can do that. If they're any good, they're going to be busy. You want to be busy. So you've got time to do that. You give them a phone call, you send them a follow-up email. If they didn't get that, you send them a text to say, hey, did you get the email? You ring them the next day, once, not twice. Right? You can only ring a person twice in the very beginning of a relationship. Right? So your follow-up's got to be impeccable. And you've got to do things that other people can't do. And that's about time. It's about how quick and about the value and also being thorough. So you need to summarize everything you do, right? So here's another tip, right? The brain remembers things in threes, right? I can't go into the semantics of it all now. Apple built a whole monster on it, right? But if you look at songs like the Beatles, you know, She Loves Me, yeah, yeah, yeah. The Big, the Bad, the Ugly. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Flags are in 3. Everything's in 3s, right? If you've got 2 washing machines, one's 500, one's 1,000, people either go cheap or expensive. The minute you put the middle one in there, the third one, they go, shit, 500, 750, 1,000. I'm going to compare them all, right? Put things in 3s. So when you go back to them, you put it in 3s. Okay, Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones, I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this. You give them 3 things. Or you ring up that person. Hey, John, just wondering where you're at with this. I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this. They'll remember the 3 things that you've done. The minute you go to the 4th thing, they'll forget. But your follow-up has to be impeccable. Then you'll start to edge the other person out in productivity. Once you start to beat them in productivity, you've got to work on that trust. So you need to outproduce them with your efforts. Make sense? That done? Yeah, okay. Sorry, guys. No more questions. Thanks very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed everything today. Thank you.
Okay. So next, we're going to have Brandon from Energy Training Group. So thanks for being here, and he's just going to go through some of the essentials for battery installation, as well as the new Growatt Arc HV battery. So really looking forward to this. I'll get your presentation up now.
While they're sorting that. Hi, my name's Brendan. I'm the head trainer at Energy Training Group. We provide training for like your solar and battery courses at the moment, and we're going to be adding in our disconnect, reconnect for plumbers. We're going to be doing working at heights. We're going to be doing white cards, that sort of thing at a later date. Now, I'm a pretty different guy from, how do I do these? That button there? Yep, this is me. So I'm not the sales guy, I'm a technical guy, right? So I'm here to talk to you about pretty much the things you need to know before you start installing batteries. Like, there's a lot of different standards and stuff around batteries. I personally have a lot of experience in the solar industry. I started out bashing in solar systems about 12 years ago, and I have managed projects over a megawatt, ran engineering teams, done all sorts of different technical roles across the solar industry. And now I'm a trainer, so let's get into it. It's important to understand when you are installing batteries that you understand there are a lot of standards that are related to the installation of batteries. All the guys in here that are electricians are going to know AS3000, that is your wiring rules and is obviously the Bible that you must comply with all of your electrical wiring. 4777 1 and 2 are the standards that relate to AC connection and inverters. All your inverters you buy, I mean, they should be compliant with 4777 2. That shouldn't be an issue. And you need to comply with 4777 1 on the AC side of your installation. 5033, recently a new version of 5033 came out, and a lot of people are still getting familiar with the new 5033 2021. We do have a blog on our website if you are interested in looking at some of the changes. I wrote a bit of a blog just to like highlight the most important things that are different to the old 5033. And specifically to batteries, you need to understand AS NZ 5139. So batteries for a long time were installed under basically a bastardisation of the off-grid standard because there was no standard for on-grid battery systems. That changed in 2019. We got 5139, and this is the standard you must comply with all your on-grid battery systems. There's also a couple other things you need to consider. You've got to be aware of the CEC design guide, installation guidelines. You need to know that there's a best practice guide that discusses different types of batteries. That's online. You can find that on Google pretty easily. It's a free document. And if you're doing commercial battery installation, you need to be aware of the national construction codes. This is sort of showing you where each standard applies. Okay, so AS3000 applies to the entire installation. You always need to comply with that as an electrician. 4777 1, as you can see here, is the AC side of the installation. The inverters must comply with 4777 2. Your PV array must comply with 5033, and your battery installation needs to comply with 5139. So it's a bit of a minefield. There's a lot of different standards you need to be across before you can start installing batteries. Now, in the standard, right, there are 3 different types of batteries. There are, I think I've got them here, a pre-assembled battery system. So a pre-assembled battery system, essentially the inverter and the battery are all inside the one box, right? You've just got an AC connection, it plugs up to your inverter, to your battery box. That's considered what's called a Section 4 battery under the standard, right? So examples of that would be the Tesla, the Redback, the Sonnen battery. You can see with these ones, you don't have an inverter and a battery separate. They're one unit, they've got an AC connection, all the connections are inside the box. That's considered a Section 4 battery. A Section 5 battery is a pre-assembled battery system that is separate from the inverter, okay? So these would be where you've done the inverter and then you connect the battery to the DC input on the inverter. So I think LG Chem and BYD have been around for a while. You know, some guys might be familiar with those batteries. And the Growatt Arc is the one that Growatt are launching, I think, very shortly. And they're a Section 5 battery. Finally, Section 6 batteries. Now, these are definitely the most different battery in the standard. I would suspect most people are not going to install Section 6 batteries unless you are doing large-scale off-grid systems, okay? So if you're just doing like residential and commercial overall, I wouldn't be stressing too much about Section 6 batteries and I wouldn't concern myself with learning an enormous amount about them. But if you were interested in doing them, a Section 6 battery is a battery that you assemble basically from scratch. You're not buying a pre-assembled box that's got the battery in it. You are buying all the cells, you are buying everything separately, you are building the battery system out. I suspect these batteries will largely go the way of the Dodo. Most people aren't going to, with the advances in battery technology, they're all coming in a box now. They're all coming much more idiot-proof. You can really like just plug and play with a lot of the battery systems that are out there now. Now, a really important thing to understand about different battery techs on the market is battery chemistry. So there's 2 main chemistries that are out there on the market at the moment. The main 2 ones you're going to see that are available to you are lithium NMC, which stands for nickel, manganese, cobalt, and then there is lithium iron phosphate, okay? There are other chemistries like lithium titanate, we've got zinc bromine flow batteries, lead acid batteries, and if you even pay the slightest attention to like renewable energy news, there will always be some new chemistry being spoken about that's just on the horizon, that's just about to come out at any time, right? In reality, most of those chemistries take a very long time to get from an article in a newspaper to actually a mass manufactured device that any of us are going to be able to get our hands on, right? So at least for the next couple of years, you're going to be looking at lithium NMC and lithium iron phosphate. Now you need to understand as well when you're looking at batteries, just so you can look at a spec sheet and you can compare your batteries and work out what's what and what's good and what's bad, all right? So batteries will have all sorts of different ratings and the spec sheets when you first look at them can look a bit intimidating. The first thing you want to look at obviously is kilowatts. So kilowatts is not the amount of storage in the battery, it's the instantaneous output of the battery. There's no point installing a battery that can only output 3 kilowatts if I wanted to supply a load that requires 5 kilowatts, okay? I need to make sure my battery is big enough to output the current required to power whatever appliances or devices I expect my battery to be providing power to. Particularly important when you're doing backup, okay? Because if you're doing backup, you need to make sure that your system's adequate, or if it goes into backup mode and the customer goes to try and turn on their pump and it doesn't start, you've cocked up, right? You've installed the wrong gear. The next thing you need to understand is kilowatt hours. So kilowatt hours is the amount that is stored within the battery. And I know lots of guys use the terms kilowatts and kilowatt hours interchangeably. They're not the same thing, right? And when you're talking to customers in particular, you need to make sure you're using the correct terminology or else you sound like you don't know what you're talking about, right? And if you don't sound like the expert, they're not going to buy a $10,000 battery system off you. Round trip efficiency. So to be honest, lots of battery manufacturers are not publishing this information and it would be nice if they did. We'd like to know how much energy is going into the battery and then how much energy is coming out. Lots of batteries have, because they have a BMS on board, which is a piece of software that lives on the battery, That's a vampire load, right? That software is actually consuming power that you're putting into the battery. And that's not really being published. We're not really sure with a lot of battery manufacturers what the round trip efficiency is of most batteries. I would like to see that information more publicly available so we can compare batteries. But I don't really see it changing, because if they're getting away with doing it now without it, why would they start adding that when potentially they might have a BMS that's actually sucking up a lot of the juice of the battery, and you're putting in power that you're then not getting out at a later date. Understanding what a cycle is. So a cycle is where the battery has been fully charged and then fully discharged, right? On average, you expect any grid-connected battery system to cycle once a day, right? You're going to charge it up during the day off the solar panels, and then you're going to discharge it at night to supply your loads with your stored solar energy, right? Most battery warranties will have a time warranty, be it 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. Then they'll also have a cycle warranty. So sometimes that cycle warranty may run out before the time warranty. It can be a bit of a minefield. Make sure that you're checking your warranties on any batteries you decide that you are going to be installing, all right? Because warranty is obviously a pretty big deal. Batteries are expensive. You don't want to be ending up with a bunch of lemons out in the field after 5 years or so. C rate is something that a lot of guys probably don't fully understand, but it essentially is related to kilowatts. It's another way of representing the max charge and discharge rate of a battery. Okay, so lithium, basically you're working back from what is called 1C. So 1C means the battery can discharge entirely in 1 hour, right? So if I had a 10 kilowatt hour battery and I was discharging at 1C, I would discharge at 10 kilowatts and it would be empty within an hour. Most batteries won't be rated to do 1C. The harder I charge and discharge my batteries, the hotter they get, and the hotter they get, the less their lifespan will be, okay? We don't want our batteries thermal cycling all the time. So you'll find that most batteries that are on the market are somewhere around the half C rate. You'll find, like, if you're buying a 10 kilowatt hour battery, generally they're discharging at around 5 kilowatts max. Okay, that seems to be a pretty manageable C rate for most batteries, and it appears that most manufacturers have settled on the fact that at half C, they expect their batteries are going to last the lifetime of the warranty they've given, right? When you're doing commercial batteries, if you do really big batteries, the warranties can be quite complicated because the battery may be allowed to discharge at up to 2C for short periods of time, but then only for maybe, let's say, 10 hours a year, right? And the warranties can get very, very complicated if you've ever done large-scale battery packs for commercial systems. Residential, pretty much you're limited to a half C rate on most lithium batteries out there. Finally, depth of discharge. So a battery cannot discharge to 100%. If you discharge a battery entirely, the battery is cooked, right? So it's a brick, you're going to throw it in the bin. So most lithium batteries will have a depth of discharge of around 90 to 95%. That is why lithium batteries are so much smaller than lead-acid storage systems, because the old school lead-acid systems, they had a depth of discharge of around 50% if you expected the battery to last longer than 3 or 4 years. So there's an awful lot of battery that used to get left on the table. With lithium, you're discharging, down to 90 to 95%. However, if a lithium battery does discharge to 100%, same thing, it's still cooked, right? It's going to go in the bin. Mostly batteries won't allow you to do that. They've got a BMS on board. That BMS is going to trip out, right? It's not going to allow the battery to deep discharge. Some of the initial batteries that were released onto the market a few years ago did have an issue where they would overload, particularly the LG Chem batteries. But largely that seems to have been solved by most manufacturers now, and I'm not seeing depth of discharge issues out in the field anymore. Can I get a drink of water from someone, please, while I'm talking? Thank you. Just so you understand the two differences between the two chemistries, right? Again, lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, and lithium iron phosphate are the two things that you are going to see most commonly. So lithium NMC, nickel, manganese, cobalt, the main advantage to NMC is the fact that you get the most amount of storage per kilo of battery, right? So lithium NMC is going to be the most common chemistry that you are going to see in electric vehicles, definitely, right? Because energy density is important. I can't make the car too heavy. I want the battery as small as I can possibly make it. So you're going to be seeing lithium NMC inside EVs. They generally have a higher charge and discharge rate and a slightly higher voltage. However, they run hotter. They need the material cobalt, right? Cobalt is almost entirely sourced in questionable ethical ways, okay? A lot of it comes from the Congo, and a lot of it is mined by child slaves, right? It's not a particularly ethical material, cobalt. And they're also more expensive because the materials in them are less abundant, and they will degrade more quickly, and they are less safe. By less safe, I mean that if you were to pierce a lithium NMC battery, you will have a thermal runaway event, okay? Thermal runaway event means your battery ignites. A lithium fire is obviously quite dangerous. A lithium fire is self-oxygenating. If my battery, I've had a phone go up in flames in my pocket, you can drop a lithium battery on fire into a bucket of water. It will keep burning underwater, okay? It supplies its own oxygen. You cannot put it out. It just has to burn itself out over time. Lithium iron phosphate is obviously made with lithium and iron and phosphate. They are more abundant materials, okay? They're not sourced, they're not going to be sourced, we'd hope they're not sourced, from non-ethical sources. They're cheaper due to the fact that they have, again, more abundant materials inside of them. They tend to be more efficient, and they tend to degrade a lot slower, right? They also have a higher level of safety in the fact that if you pierce them, they won't have a thermal runaway event. That's not to say that they can't possibly set on fire. All lithium batteries have a risk of that, but it is much less likely with lithium iron phosphate. The main difference, though, is it's much bigger for the same amount of storage, okay? However, and I think for stationary storage, who really cares? Okay, if you're installing a battery at someone's house, it's much better to go with a battery that's going to last longer, that's safer, right? Rather than put something that's more expensive and is going to degrade more quickly just to save a little bit of space, right? It matters in an EV, definitely. In an EV, I've got to be as light as I possibly can. For a piece of stationary storage that I put in someone's garage, who cares if it's slightly bigger, right? It's not a big deal. So I personally think that lithium iron phosphate is a better chemistry. Just have some drink. So at the moment, you'll see that like some brands are still using lithium NMC in their stationary storage, namely Tesla and LG Chem. Most of your other manufacturers are doing lithium iron phosphate. I would expect over time for all stationary storage to become lithium iron phosphate. Main reason being that as EVs become more prevalent, everyone's competing for the same cells. So if I'm manufacturing stationary storage batteries, I don't really want to be competing with Ford and Audi and Nissan and Toyota for the same cells. I'm going to be going with the lithium iron phosphate cells because they're going to be more readily available to me. Okay, they're going to be cheaper, and overall I think they're a better chemistry for stationary storage. There are a lot of questions around safety for batteries, but it's important you can put your customer's mind at ease when you are installing batteries. So any poorly installed electrical equipment is dangerous, right? If you do a crap job, you've installed something that's potentially storing a lot of energy at a customer's house. Stored energy is essentially a bomb. However, if you do a good job, you're not going to have any issues, okay? So it's really important that you understand what you're doing and you install the systems correctly. To do that, you need to understand the risks, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail later on. The main way you manage the risks of installing lithium batteries is where you locate them, okay? And the standard requires you to locate them in certain places to make sure that you're not going to expose the customer and the site to more risk than you have to. I've already mentioned that thermal runaway cannot be extinguished. So the main thing with lithium is that all lithiums have a BMS on board. Okay, now a BMS is a piece of software. It's like firmware. It lives on the battery. It generally won't allow a battery to get to a point where it's going to go into thermal runaway. Okay, thermal runaway is where a battery can be overcharged or over-discharged. Both of those situations could potentially cause a fire, right? Usually when you'll see a battery starting to get unsafe, it'll actually start to swell and discolour before it gets to a point where it bursts into flames, right? So I've only seen that on very early lithium batteries, and probably for at least 18 months, I haven't seen any issues. Wherever there's been issues, batteries have been turning themselves off, right? The firmware's doing its job, it's disconnecting the battery, and it's ensuring the battery doesn't deep discharge or overcharge, because both of those things are going to cause an issue. The main analogy I've always liked to use when I'm installing a battery at a customer's house is I like to compare the battery to a jerry can of fuel, right? Customers are used to having a jerry can of fuel in their garage, right? But they also understand that if I go and set it on fire, that's bad, right? You don't want to set a jerry can of fuel on fire. So if you explain to them that it's like that, think of it like a jerry can. So don't go stacking stuff around the battery, you know, don't go putting like hot things on top of it. Don't butt machinery up against it if you're installing a lathe or something in your garage. As long as you understand that there is a risk to the battery and you communicate that in a way to the customer that they understand the risk, then usually they're pretty comfortable with it. Another good one to compare it to is like a gas cylinder, right? We know gas cylinders are dangerous, but we've all got a gas cylinder under our barbecue and we're all comfortable with that because we understand the risk, right? Cool. Now, I just want to try, I'll get through these as quick as I can, but I want to talk about all the different ways that batteries can be installed. Now, this is particularly important when you're quoting and when you're doing site inspections, right? You need to understand what it is that you're installing, how the products you're installing work, and how they're wired up, right? The first thing you need to understand when you're looking to pair a battery and an inverter together is you need to understand the difference between an AC coupled system and a DC coupled system. So an AC coupled system is probably the easiest thing to retrofit to an existing solar system, right? Customer has existing solar. I don't want to touch their existing solar. We all know that in solar we've got a different regs book every 3.5 minutes, right? So I don't want to go and touch the old solar system because as soon as I touch the old solar system, I've got to bring that up to the current standards, right? So I want to stay as well clear from that system as I can. So if I was to just sell a customer a retrofit battery, usually your best option is to what's called AC couple a battery. By AC couple, it means that the battery, as you can see with our little sketch here, the battery is not charging from the DC from the solar, it's charging from the AC output of the inverter. All right, that means it's AC coupled. It's obviously slightly less efficient than DC coupled because you've got a few more conversions in there. And in terms of backup, not all AC coupled systems, when they're in off-grid mode, will be able to allow the other inverter to start, okay? Some technologies can and some can't. So it's really important you understand what you're selling and if your battery, when it goes into backup mode, it can actually start a third-party inverter or it can't. They're not all the same. Different inverters are different and the list is very long, so I'm not going to go into it, but you need to make sure you're researching that. A DC coupled system is where you use a hybrid inverter, okay? It's got a solar input and a battery input, okay? And the battery is DC coupled because it is charging off the DC bus of the inverter. There's no conversion from AC to DC and then back again. You can see here, they're both connected to the DC side of the inverter, therefore my battery is DC coupled to my panels. If you're doing a brand new install for a customer, you know, they don't have any solar and they want solar and battery, and you're going to do it all as one package, this is going to be a much better option because it's going to be cheaper, right? You're not buying two inverters. You're not buying a battery inverter and the PV inverter. You're buying one hybrid inverter and then you're connecting up your solar and you're connecting your batteries to that. It usually makes this install a lot more elegant too, right? One box on the wall. Customers get a bit iffy about having too many boxes on the wall sometimes, right? So a DC coupled system can be a lot simpler to do when you're starting from scratch. It also makes backup generally work better, okay? Because when we're in off-grid mode, we're still going to be able to charge our battery off the solar because the inverter's running, right? So then the solar can start. Whereas if we've got an AC coupled system, there's a good chance that the battery inverter won't be able to start the other inverter on site, okay? A lot of backup inverters, when they're in backup mode, they actually put out a sine wave at 52 hertz or 52.5 hertz. So as we know with all grid-tied inverters at 52.5 hertz, it's not going to connect, right? It's not going to start because it's not within the required grid values for our grid-tied inverter to actually start. Off-grid. Lots of customers call up and say, I want to go off-grid. They don't actually want to go off-grid once you give them a quote. Okay? Off-grid is enormously expensive. And the main reason it's enormously expensive is because you've got to cover 100% of the customer's loads. A well-designed solar and battery system can cover 80 to 90% of a customer's loads, no worries. To cover that last 10%, you are usually tripling the cost of the system. Because you have to allow for the day in the middle of June where we have the cloud sitting about this far over our head for a week straight and nothing's charging. Okay, so you have to have an enormous battery bank. This is a picture from a mate of mine called Central Spark Victoria, and he's an off-grid guru if any of you guys need off-grid. This system has over 80 kilowatt hours of storage, and the overall cost of the system was over $160,000. Not many customers want a system over $160,000. You're not going to sell many of those, okay? Unless you're doing off-grid or you come from a regional area where maybe it might be cheaper to do a $160,000 solar system than it would be to bring in power poles from 4 or 5 kilometres away. That's the main situation that it becomes valid for customers. Also, when you're in backup, one thing that's a really important thing for off-grid guys is there's a significant change in lifestyle that they have to do, right? Most of your customers are used to having the grid and they can just turn anything on whenever they want. They can do whatever they want. The grid's going to deal with it. When you have an off-grid system, you actually have to be really conscious of your energy usage. Just because you've got an enormous battery bank doesn't mean it's going to stay charged or you're going to have enough juice, again, on that 2 or 3 week period where the weather's crap. You know, where you're just not getting enough juice to charge it up. And generally you'll have a backup genset, and if your backup genset's running 8 hours a day, that tends to piss customers off too, right? So off-grid is something that, if you're going to get into it, I recommend you're either going into it whole hog or stay the hell away from it. Don't just dip your toe in off-grid, you will get burned. A really tricky thing is sizing a battery for a customer. Okay, I would say at this stage I haven't really seen any great tools for sizing batteries. I mean, all your different design tools are starting to add that to them now, like your pylons, your Aurora, Helioscope, Open Solar. They've all got some tools in there now for sizing batteries, okay? But I'm not that confident with the results that I'm getting from any of them at this stage, right? It's really quite tricky to size a battery for a customer, especially if they don't have solar. If they do have solar, there is one really easy way you can do it. Get the customer's bill, look at their export, right? If they are averaging 20 kilowatt hours of export a day, you could probably install about a 10 kilowatt hour battery, okay? And you'd know that generally it's going to cycle once a day, okay? You don't want to install a battery for a customer that's only charging to 50% every day, right? Because the customer's going to waste an awful lot of money by buying a battery that's too big for their site. But if they don't have solar, it can be quite difficult because when you look at a bill, you don't get a load profile, you know what I mean? You don't know when they're using their power. We make some educated guesses with solar, but it's a bit more difficult to make those guesses when you've got the solar, the grid, and the battery. So my recommendation isn't real great there. Suck it and see. Try and work out the best way to size a battery, and when you find it out, come and let me know. Just gonna have a big thing with batteries is backup. All customers want backup, even though most customers don't need backup, right? Most customers in most metro areas in Melbourne, honestly, they would probably lose power for 15 minutes a year, if they're lucky, right? I live in Cranbourne, a pretty standard working class suburb. I would lose power for a couple of minutes a year on average. I can't even remember the last time I had a blackout, right? But every customer, because they've spent $10,000, $15,000 on a battery system, they really, really want backup. That's something that customers love and they really feel like they need. So it's important that backup's probably the most complicated part of installing batteries. So you need to understand how to install it. The most important thing about installing a backup system is that when you are in backup mode, all active conductors must be disconnected from the grid, right? We should all be familiar with anti-islanding from a PV system. And anti-islanding is important because without anti-islanding, we could potentially kill a linesman, right? Linesmen turn the power off in the street, they turn it off for a reason. They don't want your PV inverter starting. So if it was to start, it could then start your neighbour's inverter, another neighbour's inverter, because they all see the sine wave, all the inverters in the street are starting, and then all of a sudden, poor bloke in the substation's getting cooked, right? So to go into an off-grid mode, it's really, really important that whatever you do, all active conductors are disconnected from the grid when you go into backup mode. Now, that's usually achieved in two ways with inverters. You'll either have a backup port on the inverter or an external transfer switch. You also need to make sure that your backup loads, that whatever it is that you're backing up, your inverter is capable of backing up. If a customer has a 30 kilowatt split system and you're installing a 5 kilowatt battery inverter, you can't back up their split system. It's not going to work. If they've got an enormous pool pump, you can't back up their pool pump, right? Good things to back up when you're installing a standard single phase 5 kilowatt inverter is going to be lighting. Always back up lighting circuits, right? LED lighting, it's a couple of 100 watts. You can always back up the lighting. That's not an issue. And maybe 1 or 2 power circuits, right? But you don't want to be backing up their induction cooktop. You don't want to be backing up their electric hot water service because these things can pull 6, 7, 8 kilowatts just alone. And you might only have a 5 kilowatt inverter on site. Now I'll try and, again, blast through some quick diagrams as to the way they all work. So when you have an external transfer switch, okay, what this usually means is that you've got a contactor that's on the incoming supply, right? So this would be, if anyone who's done a Tesla would be familiar with the gateway, that has a transfer switch. I believe Fronius are offering a transfer switch. I believe with the new Growatt inverter, that's going to be with an external transfer switch. Okay, so where you've got a control cable coming from your inverter back to a contactor, and when you go into backup mode, it disconnects there and it supplies the switchboard, all right? When you're using a hybrid inverter, generally these type of inverters won't allow other inverters to run when they're in backup mode, okay? What was I with this slide? So with AC coupled systems, some of them can run the backup loads, run the grid-tied inverter and can charge off the grid-tied inverter in backup mode. The main one I'm aware of at this stage is the Tesla that does this. The Powerwall has this function in that when we're in backup mode, it disconnects the active conductors from the grid. It puts out a sine wave that allows my solar system to start. And then while I'm in backup mode, I'm able to charge my battery, right, with an AC coupled system. So this one's an easy one to retrofit and still get backup that will actually allow the customer to use their solar when they're in backup. Okay? Now, one thing that's really important with AC coupled systems is that if I have a 5 kilowatt battery inverter, in backup mode, it can only charge at 5 kilowatt, right? So a 5 kilowatt inverter can only accept 5 kilowatts coming into it, as well as put 5 kilowatts going out. So if I had a system that could start a grid-tied inverter while in backup mode, I can't install a 5 kilowatt inverter, battery inverter, and then install a 10 kilowatt solar inverter next to it, right? Because when I go into backup mode, my 10 kilowatt inverter is going to overload my battery inverter whenever it's in backup mode. There's nowhere for the current to go. Usually when there's excess current, it goes to the grid. You're off grid. There's nowhere for the excess current to go, so you've got to find a place for it to go. So usually when you do this, I mean, generally if a customer wants a battery, they've usually got a few dollars, right? So they want a 10, 12, 13 kilowatt hour battery, usually connected to a 5 kilowatt inverter, but they want 10 kilowatt of solar. One way to get around that, especially if you're retrofitting, they've got existing 5 kilowatt, you're going to install your transfer switch somewhere in the board. So one of your inverters is on the backed up side of the transfer switch, and your other inverter is on the non-backed up side. And you're going to install 2 5 kilowatt inverters instead of 1 10 kilowatt inverter. So when we're in backup mode, this inverter can't overload this inverter. And when we're in backup mode, this inverter won't function. All right? I've seen that happen a lot of times where guys have thought, you know, I've got a 5 kilowatt battery inverter, I can install a 10 kilowatt solar inverter, and then in backup mode, it doesn't function as they would like. The other way of doing backup is when you've got a backup port on the inverter. So you'll see lots of inverters have like a grid port and then a backup port. I believe Sungrow do it this way, Solar Edge do it this way, okay? It's probably a bit simpler, okay? You just run 2 feeds over to the inverter. You run one for the grid feed and one for the backup feed that comes back to your switchboard. However, it does limit your circuits on your backed up side. If I've got a 25 amp main switch on my backup side, even when I'm grid tied, I've still only got 25 amps on these loads, right? Whereas if I have a contactor, I've got full grid power when I'm in on-grid mode, and I'm only limiting my current when I'm in off-grid mode. Whereas this system, always, the circuits on this side of the circuit are always limited to 25 amps on the assumption I've got a 5 kilowatt inverter. Okay, so you don't want to, again, you can't be putting like a pump or anything like that on the backup port on these sort of inverters. The next thing I wanted to talk about is where we can install batteries. There are a lot of restrictions as to where you can install batteries. And I'm talking at the moment about Section 4 and 5 batteries. The restrictions are even greater if you do one of those Section 6 batteries that you have to assemble. The main things are that you cannot be within 600 mil of any exit or any side of a window or building ventilation that ventilates a habitable room, within 600 mil of any hot water units, air conditioning units, or any other appliance not associated with the integrated BESS. Now, one thing to think about, what is associated equipment? The inverter is considered associated equipment, okay? So inverter can be within the exclusion zone. The switchboard can also be within the exclusion zone, okay? Because it's associated equipment to the electrical installation. You can't install them in the ceiling space, in the wall cavities, you can't install them on the roof, you can't install them under a stairway, under an access walkway, or in an evacuation route. Okay, so you need to find a nice bit of clear wall to be installing batteries. You cannot install them near, mostly you've got to be avoiding windows, right, and doors. They're the main things you're considering when you're doing your site inspection. Another very important thing to consider is fireproofing, okay? So a battery, if it is installed on a combustible wall, it must be fireproofed, 600 mil either side and 900 mil above. Right, so ideally you just don't want to install on a combustible wall. You're usually going to be putting your batteries inside a garage, okay, because they don't like the sun. If you're installing on a plaster wall, you are putting up usually 2 times 2.4 by 1.2 cement sheets. It is big and it is ugly, right? And generally when customers come out after you put it in, they insist they want it on this wall. You put up the cement sheet, they come out and they're like, oh, that's disgusting, but by then it's too late, right? It does help, yeah. You can hack the crap out of the wall and then cover it up with cement sheet. So that is one advantage. However, that's only for a combustible wall. If you are installing on brick, you don't have to worry about it. Cement, you don't have to worry about it. Even new weatherboard homes, weatherboard is actually a fire-rated material. Okay, but it's only if it's a new weatherboard home. Old weatherboards are just wood, right? They're not a fire-rated material. Therefore, it's a combustible surface, and you will need to fireproof the wall. So this is an example you can see of a wall that we'd fireproof before we installed a battery, okay? 2 sheets, because we've got 600 mil from here to here of cement sheet, and we've got to stay 600 mil away from the door, and the inverter can go within the exclusion zone, okay? Only the inverter or the switchboard. Any other appliances cannot be within that exclusion zone. You would not want it to be getting direct sunlight. So if it was a north-facing wall, I would not be installing it on any north-facing wall. South-facing walls on an external wall, I'd be comfortable with, and even west, I'd be a bit iffy. Right? The main thing is to look at the site and make sure you're not going to be receiving any direct sunlight on a battery. Direct sunlight drastically increases the internal temperature. Okay, so we found with battery installation, we are probably 95% of the time putting them inside a garage. On the odd occasion when we have put them outside, the customer has to build a little house to cover up the battery and keep the direct sunlight off it. However, that little house has to be open all around the outside because you want airflow, okay? You don't want to build like a sealed shed around it because, again, the battery's going to get too hot. East wall, yeah, I mean, east wall will be okay, right? Because, I mean, it's going to get direct sunlight first thing in the morning. But I'll be looking as much as you can for shady areas. Like, I'm really worried that batteries in 5 and 6 and 7 years' time that are getting direct sunlight, they're the ones that we're going to find have degraded enormously, right? Because that temperature is going to have an effect over time, right? You're not going to notice in the first 12 months, but you might notice in 3, 4, 5 years, the ones you put in the garage are still going strong, and the ones that are copping direct sunlight are no longer going strong. Yep. No. Did they not? They couldn't hear me? Oh, what he asks. Sorry. He just asked that with 600 mil from the door, is the garage door included? No. Okay. I have heard that guys have been defected for that. However, I contacted ESV when because I told one of my students to do it, and then they got defected. So I went to ESV and asked the question, and ESV have told me that they're more than happy for them to be installed next to the garage door, because obviously you've got 5 metres of garage door, you can still egress through the garage door. Yep. We've sort of already covered that. Never install in direct sunlight. Temperature is going to be the main thing that's going to destroy your batteries, okay? So you want them to be as climate controlled possible, as much of a climate controlled environment as possible, right? I think a garage is going to be best for that. It's also important that batteries don't respond very well to a cold environment either. At 0 degrees and below, a battery won't actually work, okay? The chemical reaction in the battery can't occur under 0 degrees. It can't produce energy, okay? So let's say you're installing in the snowfields or something like that, you might have to consider to make that battery being inside, right? Or somewhere where it's heated, because it can't get under 0 degrees or it will just cease to function until it gets warmed up again. I, again, highly recommend you're installing them in garages wherever possible. This is an example of a battery we installed outside, and we built a little house to keep it out of the sun. You can see that the top and the front is protected from the sun, and it's only open on the outside, right? So it's got plenty of airflow, but we're keeping direct sunlight off the battery. And Eve isn't going to achieve this, right? Eve's up high, your battery's down at ground level, so generally an Eve isn't going to provide enough shade to protect your battery. So in a garage, I found that the best place to install our batteries was in these front 2 corners just here, right? In a garage, you'll usually find that this wall's plaster, and they back onto a habitable room, okay? So you need to fireproof the wall when you're backing onto a habitable room. Any habitable room is like lounge room, study. Think of it as anywhere where you could have a couch or a bed. That's a habitable room. So you really want to put your batteries so they're not backing onto a habitable room. Obviously, the external wall of the garage is not a bad idea because you don't have your fireproofing requirements. But you also have to protect the battery from mechanical damage. So if you installed a battery inside a garage, you have to put a bollard in front of the battery if it could be struck by a vehicle. Okay? If I install them here and here behind these little nib walls, they're not going to be able to be hit by a battery. You're going to have to put an ugly bollard in front of your nice, sexy battery install. Okay? It's going to look nice. And, I mean, unless there's a value add, unless you really want to sell bollards to customers, these are really ideal locations. That's probably where I installed more batteries than any other. I really like just behind that nib wall. It's always brick as well. It's never plaster just there, so much easier to be mounting all your equipment. Isolators. Okay, now, if you are doing 48 volt batteries, so low voltage batteries, you will find you need to install a molded case circuit breaker, unless the circuit breaker is built into the inverter, into the battery, and readily accessible. However, most of your 48 volt batteries do not have a readily accessible molded case circuit breaker in them. So you're going to have to install something that looks like this. These are around 150 bucks, right? They're not a cheap item. So sometimes this can like really tip a 48 volt battery over the limit of being more expensive than a high voltage battery because you need more gear to install it, right? Low voltage batteries run at much higher current. That's why they require molded case circuit breakers and not your standard like miniature circuit breaker, okay? A high voltage battery, on the other hand, usually you're going to be running, they'll usually got a built-in circuit breaker, and you're going to run, we're at cable requirements, you're usually going to run a 6mm square twin to most of your high voltage batteries. Nearly all of your high voltage batteries have a 63 amp circuit breaker built into them. 6mm PV1F DC solar cable is good for around 70 amps. So therefore your 6mm is good to connect to a 63 amp breaker on a battery. But you size your battery cable to the size of the breaker that is inside the battery, all right? That's what dictates your cable size. However, when we're using a 125 amp molded coast circuit breaker on a low voltage battery, we're going to be having to deal with like 35mm square cable, right? If you are installing low voltage batteries, I highly recommend you buy yourself some flex. If you are dealing with stranded 35mm, it is a pain in the ass, right? It's just super rigid, it's really hard to work with, and it really sucks. So yeah, I do find high voltage batteries to be a lot easier to install for the main reason that I can use smaller cables, smaller breakers, everything's a lot easier. Now, I just want to go over some common installation issues, okay, that we have when we're installing batteries. One of the biggest considerations when you're doing your site inspections for batteries is the switchboard. If you are doing backup, right, and all battery systems need a smart meter, right? You must meter the incoming supply for a battery system to operate correctly. It requires that. Now, that means that's going to take up space in my switchboard. I've also got my solar supply main switch. I might have my battery inverter main switch. I've got a backup supply main switch. All of a sudden, I'm chewing up a lot of space in a switchboard that a customer may not have, right? This becomes even worse on a three-phase site. On a three-phase site, I might have 3 poles of main switch, 3 poles of backup supply main switch, 4 poles of 3-phase smart meter. Like I'm up to 12 or 13 poles in a switchboard so I can install a 3-phase backup system for a customer. How many people have 14 poles spare in their switchboard? Almost nobody, okay? So usually you're going to be doing some sort of switchboard upgrade. Switchboard upgrades are good money. You know, if you can convince the customer to do a board upgrade, that's not a bad thing, you know. Bit of money in your pocket. However, it can kill an installation too, because sometimes you'll go, well, you need $2,000 worth of switchboard upgrade before I can do any work. Customer balks and goes, nah, too expensive, I'm out, right? Because you've added all this extra work. However, you're not going to be able to achieve it without having enough space in the switchboard for all this equipment. So, I mean, that's really important that you site inspect battery jobs, right? You can't judge a customer's switchboard from near maps, right? You really need to get someone out to site and make sure the switchboard's adequate before you start your install. Another real common installation is finding appropriate installation locations. So we have said, you know, ideally in a garage, but you can do that little house thing that we saw. But you do want to keep them out of the sun. In inner city areas, you might find the customer has nowhere that's suitable for a battery, right? There might just be nowhere you can fit the thing. And that's going to obviously kill an install if there's nowhere you can fit the battery. Managing customer expectations regarding backup is really important, right? When you do a handover at the end of an installation, you need to make sure you communicate to the customer how the backup works, right? They need to understand that they can't just go and turn on every single thing in their house, right, when they're in backup mode. They're used to having the grid. They just think that, and they think the backup is just like the grid, but it's not, right? It's a current limited source. There's only so much things they can run on backup. And you do find as an installer, you get out to site and the first thing you tell the customer, so what circuits do you want to back up? Oh, the salesperson told me that I can back up the entire house. You're like, nah, right? And then right from the first 5 minutes of the install, as the installer, you're on the back foot trying to, you know, smooth the customer over, make sure they understand what's going on, and actually get to a solution that they're happy with, all right? So when you're selling battery systems, it's important you don't sell the customer the world and tell them the battery system can do everything the grid can do, because it can't, right? It's not the grid. The other 2 really common issues I've seen with installation is communications issues. I'm sure anyone who's been in solar retail for a while would understand this. Comms issues are the bane of our existence, right? Lots of electricians are very good at connecting red to red, black to black, and green to green. But when they have to deal with Cat5 cabling, routers, RS485, Modbus, and other communications protocols. They freak out and they can't work it out. Okay? The best way to manage that issue is to only sell a pretty select set of equipment. Don't be selling a different battery every week, okay? Because just as your installers are getting familiar with a piece of equipment, working out the little kinks and quirks of it, you go and sell the next battery that comes out on the market, you start all those problems all over again. If you're installing similar equipment most days, it makes your job as an installer a lot easier because you become familiar with the little kinks, right? The little sticking points that you have when you're commissioning. Finally, commissioning, right? There are a lot of installers out there, particularly solar installers, who think that you can just turn the inverter on. I've got a green light, beauty, I'm leaving, right? The system's working. It's a bit more complicated to commission a battery system. You need to make sure that it's working correctly, right? You want to make sure it's discharging correctly, charging correctly. You want to make sure all your current flows are going in the correct directions. Okay, so commissioning can take a little bit of time to make sure that you test everything. And there's usually some sort of app, software, a laptop or something that you need to log in. And again, lots of electricians are outdoors kids, right? There's a reason they dropped out of school in year 10 and picked up pliers, right? They're not whizzes on a computer. So again, another way to handle that is just keep your product range relatively narrow with things that you rely on and that you understand. And things that you can especially assist your installers with and make sure that you can give them technical assistance when they're commissioning, okay? Now, that's all my general battery information. Have anyone got any questions on anything that I've covered thus far? No, we're all pretty good. So the last thing is just to do a little bit of a spruik of the new Growatt battery. I got given a demo model to play with in my workshop just 2 days ago, so I had a bit of a play with it. It's a modular battery. I will say I am a big fan of the modular style batteries, right? A single 10 kilowatt hour battery can be over 100 kilos, and that's a pain in the ass to move around. Batteries that are modular and you can stack up are a lot easier to install, okay? And batteries that you don't have to wall mount, right? I want to be mounting my batteries on the ground because wall mount sucks. I'm hanging 150 kilos of battery off a wall. You've got to get a lot of Dynabolts in. You've got to pick up studs. You need to cut holes in the wall, like my friend over here said, install extra studs. That can add a lot of time. If I can just install my batteries on the ground, that's a lot easier to install. So the way we install these batteries was pretty straightforward. We pretty much drop our battery base down, okay, near the wall, and then we start stacking our battery modules up. Now we can stack up to, I believe, 25 kilowatt hours, so that's going to be a pretty tall battery to consider if you're selling a battery that big. Make sure there's enough overhead room. We stack our battery modules up, and then we need to make sure that we tie, you can see up on the picture on the left there, you need to tie the battery into the wall, okay, particularly with tall batteries. You mount them on the ground, you don't want 300 kilos of battery crushing someone's child, right? You're going to get in trouble for that, so we don't want that to occur. So make sure you're tying your battery into the wall. This is in our workshop, so that's a big, that's a concrete wall with a piece of wood mounted on the front of it, because we pull inverters on and off that wall all the time, so it's sort of like, it's in our training centre. But yeah, if you're installing something, I wouldn't be putting that into a wall mate, right? You want to be fixing that to something that's solid. And then you stack your battery management unit on top. So the BMU is usually where you make all your final connections. It's where the breaker's going to be, and it's where the BMS, the firmware, exists on the battery. Next thing you do with these batteries is you need to tie them all together. So it was pretty straightforward. You've got these little flaps. You undo that flap, you rotate it down, and you put the screw in, and that ties them all together. So that's, again, the whole battery can't fall forward or flex. Then you need to make sure all your batteries are earth, so we connect all our earth cables up. Again, that was pretty straightforward. All these earth cables come prefabricated in the box. Then we plug all of our batteries together. I did take my picture a little bit early, and there's an extra cable that should run from here to here. Okay, the batteries are in series. Okay, you need to plug each one in series with the next one, and then you have a final battery a cable that comes up to there. And then you need to install your comms cables. But again, they're all prefabricated, plug it in, and that's it. The one thing that's going to be really important, and I suspect that guys are going to cock up more than anything, is you need to take your termination plug and plug it into your final battery. Okay, this is probably an issue. I've seen this on inverters that need a termination plug. Anywhere where there's a Modbus communications loop, you need a termination plug at the end of the loop. And I've gone to lots of sites to fault find with guys, and they've just left off that plug, and that's why their comms aren't working. And I suspect that's going to be the exact same thing for this battery. Guys are going to sit there pulling their hair out and going, why isn't the comms working? And they're going to have left that termination plug out. So that's something you want to get plugged in. You cap off your unused comms ports, and then you're connecting your inverter to these ports here, right? That is pretty much how you're going to assemble it. That's pretty straightforward. It looked pretty easy to deal with. Mind you, I'm obviously dealing with something in a nice open training centre. It's not the real world, but it looked like a pretty straightforward battery, so I was pretty confident it's going to be all right. Finally, I need to flog myself and my business. I'm from Energy Training Group. You can find us at energytraininggroup.com.au. Training is really important. You need to know what you're doing when you're dealing with things like batteries. They are dangerous, right? You need to be accredited before you are installing. You will not be able to claim, the main thing is you will not be able to claim the Solar Vic rebate unless you are accredited in battery installation. Okay, we also provide PV accreditation as well. Our training involves a 3-day face-to-face course where you sit in the classroom, where you get to listen to me continue to talk, and you'll do some practical as well. In our workshop, we have some varied batteries you can work off. We have varied solar panels and stuff for you to work on if you're doing your solar course. And then there's a bunch of self-paced online theory, okay? So 3 days seems like a pretty... guys are prepared to sacrifice 3 days. I think if you come in for 3 days, you'll learn a lot. And then after that, it's really on you as the student to make sure you get through the online coursework. But that's the structure of the course if you're interested. And I guess the main thing is that I find that most of the other schools that are offering training, the trainers probably haven't touched a solar panel for at least a decade. I am the head trainer there, and I am a fairly experienced solar installer. So mostly I've been there and done that, and I can relate to the guys that are doing the installs, okay? That's it. That's my talk. Anyone got any questions? Happy? Cool? We're done?
Okay, and now it's my job to finish this off. So I'd just like to thank everyone for coming, and I'd also like to extend that to everyone online as well. We know that it was a lot of information, and we hope that you got something out of it, and I know that even I just learnt a lot watching all of that. Some great sales stuff covered, some absolutely amazing new products coming out from both Jinko and Growatt, and the amount of things about energy, about battery installation and like Energy Training Group, really experts can't sing their praises enough. So thank you everyone for coming, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. As far as CPD certificates and the vouchers, the more information about these will be sent out tomorrow, and we'll update you on getting them sent out to everybody. Okay, thank you, and see you next time.